My friend says caffeine's a drug. I said, oh, tell your friend, fuck you.
I don't want to be your buddy, but just want a little breakfast.
Hello and welcome to Breakfast Punks, a podcast about weird shit, DIY punk and trashy movies, brought to you by Sham City Roasters and Deadbeat Donuts. From Hastings, I'm Dave.
And I'm Siobhan, and welcome to episode 34. In this week's episode, we're talking about New York hardcore scene and the film Surf Nazis Must Die from 1987.
We're going to kick off with the song. If you listen to our last episode, all about the Hopeless Records sampler, Hopelessly Devoted to You, you'll know that we swooned about a certain band called the Bollweevils.
We did do a big swoon.
And we've had rather a nice week because Daryl from the Bollweevils contacted us and said he really enjoyed the episode and told us, because I made some sort of smarmy comment about how they hadn't responded to me on Facebook, told us we could go ahead and play their song. So we're going to play their song.
Thank you.
I expected to completely fanboy out about that, but I think I dealt with that rather well.
You have done it
So this is a song by the Bollweevils, who are from Chicago. It was released last year. We mentioned it on the last episode, but it is due out on their forthcoming album, which is being recorded at the end of this month, and they're hoping to have it out before the end of the year. The song is called Liniment and Tonic. It's fucking brilliant, and this is the Bollweevils.
Everyone, and the highlights of the news this Thursday.
Breaking news is part of this job.
You are fake news. This is what's happening in your world tonight. It's fucking news.
Breaking news, Siobhan.
Yes?
This slimy turd-like magnetic robot could grab things from inside your body.
What?
Says a Chinese university. A slime...
A slimy turd robot?
A slime turd robot can move around. It is controlled by magnets.
Oh no, inside you. Move around inside you.
Yeah, it can surround... This actually covers so many different aspects of things that we enjoy on this podcast.
I don't know, I don't feel like I'm enjoying anything right now.
The idea of the slimy turd robot is that you can pop it up yourself and it can retrieve things that you've previously popped up yourself.
Oh, what, like that, the jar that someone put into their urethra from last week?
So many different things that we've had. People have put all sorts. Didn't someone swallow a mobile phone?
What?
I think that was in China too. This slime, it can move around, controlled by magnets. It surrounds things in the shape of either a C or an O. It picks them up and then you can move it out of the body using magnets, which I imagine would hurt like fuck, depending on what it is that it's got.
Oh, imagine a little slime turd robot moving around inside you, wriggling around, trying to get your glass out of yourself.
Your glass out of your urethra.
Yeah, out of your urethra.
Well, there is one
dear.
problem. At the moment, it's far too toxic to actually use inside the human body. This poo thing does look disgusting.
Like a poo?
It looks like a kind of like if your poo was made of tar. Like it's jet black.
Yeah, like a Guinness poo. Isn't it a Guinness poo?
It looks
like
if you had a poo that was actually this colour, you should definitely just go and put yourself down.
We nursed someone that used to go into a bedpan that had poos that were quite black. Do you remember that?
Oh, do you know what? They're about that colour, but that doesn't help. That doesn't help the listener.
That helps no one else.
But the interesting thing is, the researcher revealed the slime behaves quite differently according to how you approach it. When you touch it very quickly, it behaves like a solid, and when you touch it gently and slowly, it behaves like a liquid.
See if you correct, like cornflour. Cornflour does this. It's not very exciting.
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean,
Like
it's made of polyvinyl alcohol, borax, and particles of neodymium.
So if
magnet. Hang on, no, particles of a neodymium. I can't say it.
like a dinosaur.
Yeah.
So if you caress it, it turns to a mush.
Okay, so weird.
Intrigue.
The next thing on this article is very much like mixing water with cornstarch.
Told you.
Oh, that's exactly what you said.
Cornstarch pellet. Don't know what the bother with this stuff for.
But it could be used inside the human body, inside the digestive tract. They're trying to make it less toxic.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to produce a protective layer that would deter the toxic particles from interacting with the human body. So it would actually still be toxic.
It'd just be under something that wasn't toxic.
Indeed, it would be like wearing a mask. So therefore you wouldn't get COVID. Safety would also strongly depend on how long you would keep them inside of your body.
Oh, God. What if you couldn't get it back out and then the nice layer gets removed and then you just have this toxic poo inside you?
I think you have to keep putting bigger toxic black turds inside
To go
your body
retrieve the previous?
and just keep pulling them out. That's the only way.
It is the only way. Well, let's hope that we never have to. Well, I don't know. I'm quite intrigued. Does it crawl inside? Do you have to put it inside you, or can you?
It's magnets.
Can the magnets lure themselves so they can crawl up inside?
Well,
I don't know what's worse.
I imagine that you probably have to start by popping it up yourself.
You don't
and then
just
the
present
magnets,
yourself in front
and
of
then
them.
they do the rest of it with magnets from afar.
It just walks in. Dee, 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 dee.
No, in the shape of a C or an O, depending on the shape of your orifice.
No, but it walks in like it goes in like a pellet.
It hasn't
I
got
imagine.
legs, Siobhan. It's just a turd.
But it goes in the shape of a poo
I think that's the idea.
for ease of travel, and then when it gets to its
But the
item, it gets around it, envelopes around it.
from what I can make out from what it says, it goes in the shape of a C.
What?
So I think that's going to be quite painful, but better than the shape of an O.
Can't it just go in the shape of a poo?
Well, the picture looks like it does go. It looks a little bit like a butt plug, the
Oh.
shape that they've given.
Well, this is all very delightful. My next news story does have the term mutant in the title, so we're going on a similar vein, but very much...
Is it a slimy mutant?
No, it's far more enjoyable and delicious, I would go as far as to say. Dad finds mutant 5-inch crisp in his cheese and onion Aldi snack. This has made the news. Michael Lanford thought that he was dreaming when he pulled out his massive snack this morning. Oh, his massive snack, sorry. The gigantic potato-based snack measures in at 6 inches, although it does say 5 inch in the title.
Yeah.
But it is not, by anywhere, a stretch of the imagination, a world record.
Oh.
Loads of people keep pulling out these 6-inch snacks out of their bags.
How big is... Hang on. Is it... Oh, I suppose it's from a family-sized bag of crisps.
No, it's just from an Aldi packet of crisps. Just a normal packet of crisps.
But they're not 6 inches themselves, are they?
Yeah, look at that. Look, it was... Well, I can't
look. We're
see
on the
it, but
radio.
It was in a multi-pack bag of Snack Right crisps, which was about the size of the packet himself. And he picked it up and he thought, oh, there's something weird in there. And it was a crisp the size of the packet. But he's not alone. Tons of people have been finding 6-inch crisps. So, one, why is it in the news? Two, it's already been in the news before. Tons of people find these size crisps. It's not important. Another man claims to have found a crisp pretty much the same size in another packet of crisps in Morrison's.
Oh.
But do you want to know what the record for biggest crisp in the world is?
Was it a crisp that was specifically made to break a record, or was it did it just happen to come out of a packet.
Yeah, frustratingly, it was a specially created crisp.
Well, potatoes
So it could
aren't...
be any
I mean,
size.
you can get very big potatoes, but surely... How do they make crisps? A crisp isn't like... You don't mash the potato and then
Well, for
reform
some you do.
it.
Some you do, like a hula hoop. A hula hoop's a
Yeah.
reformed potato.
I have no idea, but I'm going to say 3 metres.
I don't think so, no. 25 inches by 14 inches, and it was made by a team of US-based food engineers in 1991. So ages ago. I would love to have eaten a crisp that size. Crisps are my favourite, probably my favourite food.
I think a big crisp would be a nightmare to eat, wouldn't it? Isn't it better to have loads of small crisps?
Oh, definitely better to have loads of small crisps. But imagine if you had like a dinner plate size crisp and you just munched at it.
But as soon as you bite, like I find with a big crisp that you get them sometimes they're slightly too big for the mouth.
Slightly too big for the mouth.
And if as soon as
would
you
a,
try
would a
them,
6-inch crisp be slightly too big for your mouth?
well, I wouldn't like to say. But as soon as you bite, if you want it, let's for example say
Yeah.
you've got a crisp that you want to eat in 4, right? If you bite it once with an idea of them being able to bite it a couple more times, there's no way that works because it just
it falls apart.
disintegrates, it cracks.
I mean, this was a ridged crisp. Is it
Oh, that might
sturdier?
help.
I feel like its structural integrity.
You'd have
is a
to
bit
go
better.
from the side, and you'd
Side?
yeah, because you'd take it off at the ridge.
Oh, you'd break it
lengthwise.
ridge-wise.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
God, see, knew you'd have an answer for that. Knew you'd have an answer for that. Well, so Dorset
Crisp
Man,
doctor.
your crisp wasn't very big, but I did enjoy seeing it. Well, thank you for getting out your massive snack.
Well, talking about massive snacks, massive amounts of snacks.
Ooh, I love a massive amount of snack. We still haven't done... By the way, guys, if you're waiting for us to do the chicken nugget challenge, we are going to. Sorry, just realised we promised a chicken nugget challenge and we haven't done it yet, but we are going to. Don't worry, at some point.
We could pretend to everybody that we have done it and it's behind our Patreon paywall.
Oh, true.
Well,
and
the
we'd be-
Patreons might, call us out on that.
Yeah, I think they are going to.
Greg Superfan, who has eaten 10,000 sausage rolls, uses annual leave to spend £300 a month.
What? Wait a minute, I don't understand.
A Greg Superfan, who reckons she's scoffed more than 10,000 sausage rolls in her life, is touring every single branch of the bakery in the UK to find her favourite. Megan Topping, 27, began her mission during the first lockdown, so not even that long ago, after being furloughed from her job as a bartender. With extra time on her hands, she came up with the idea to visit 2,078 stores up and down the country in a project that would see her cover 415 miles. I mean, in a lot of ways, this is a very minor aim. But anyway, Megan from Middleton in Greater Manchester says that she's taken on an enormous challenge.
Oh.
Again, not really an enormous challenge, just to cover 415 miles. I mean, without being
eating a
funny.
lot of
Having
sausage
been in a
rolls,
band
though.
for most of my life, 415 miles.
That's true.
Isn't
No, but
that big of a
it's more
deal.
than nearly 3,000 sausage rolls she's going to have to eat along the way.
Yeah, true.
Guess it's that.
She's taken on the enormous challenge and is worried it could take her years to complete.
Oh.
She says, I would say that I am completely and utterly Greg's mad. I go almost every day and have done for years. People think this is a bit of a joke, but genuinely, Greg's has been important throughout my life, and I'm so grateful it exists. It sounds crazy, but even if I'm travelling, the first thing I look for is a Greg's.
Oh.
Which can't be very difficult. It's, again, extremely minor aims this woman has
Yeah,
in her
they're
life.
at every service station now
Exactly.
as well.
Exactly. Strangely, Megan is extremely thin and doesn't really look unwell.
Oh,
I'm-
it's an eating disorder of the other way.
I don't want to make any comment on that, but you already have. She's taken annual leave from work to aid her progress in reaching her goal. And during lockdown, Megan, who spends £300 a month in Greggs, saved up £1,000 to buy a new car, which she's since called the Greggsmobile.
Oh.
So she's a lot of fun. This will help her to make her way around the UK. I mean,
Jesus.
I suppose if she didn't have a car, then getting a car would help her.
When she visits the one in Hastings, can she let us know?
What, do you want to beat her up?
No. I mean, it did sound like I might. I mean, we know someone who works in the Hastings, Greg. She lives downstairs.
That's a very good
Get her a
point.
good deal. Save her some money on that, however many thousands of pounds she has to spend on Greg's a year.
I don't think our downstairs neighbour is going to give some random girl from Manchester a good deal because we ask her to, because we talked about her on a podcast that she doesn't even know exists.
True. True. She doesn't even like it when we turn a fan on, so it's not going to go well.
I couldn't be more excited. I work a lot and I wanted to do something fun with my life. So I thought, sod it, why not? I think it will take a few years at least, but I'm game. She describes her passion for Greg's sausage rolls, and she's had this since she was 10 years old. I didn't know Greggs existed 17 years ago.
Yeah,
That's
it used to be
sad.
Baker's. They bought out loads of things like in Norwich it was a Baker's Dozen, and they bought it out.
Oh, well, thanks. A
There you
little
go.
bit of background knowledge
There you
there.
go. I remember some things.
She used to get it on the way to school. She's loved it her whole life. She thinks it's better than any other bakery. If I could speak to the Greggs family, I would just like to thank them, as their bakes have been such a big part of my life. I just appreciate them so much.
If I could be so bold as to say that those sausage rolls are all made in the same place. So she's
Yeah.
travelling to
Yeah.
all these 2,000 odd places to eat the very same one. Because it's just regenerated in their own...
People do warm them up in their own respective ovens.
Yeah, but like they're made in one factory somewhere.
Yeah, of
you can
course.
buy them in Iceland, love. You don't need to
Yeah.
go anywhere.
Yeah.
If you've got a good oven at home, just pop them in.
The way she stays so slim, by the way, Siobhan,
Is that she
even though
only
you're
eats
suggesting
them?
that
Sorry.
she voms these back up again.
No, that wasn't what I was
is
suggesting.
That she goes for walks with her Cocker Spaniel Chino, and also her job as a bartender keeps her on her feet.
Dear.
Her usual daily order: 2 sausage rolls, 1 vegan sausage roll, a box of donuts, and a steak bake.
Every day!
Every day. And if she wants to treat herself, she'll also have a ham and cheese baguette.
Jesus
She
Christ.
says the sausage roll is the best thing Greg's has done, hands down. I love it fresh out the oven.
Why did
so
she get the
again,
big-
sorry, excuse me, Siobhan, fresh out of the oven, freshly baked by her loving Greg's people.
I've been to Greggs and sometimes it ain't fresh out the oven. Sometimes it's been there all day.
The service stations are just constantly being reheated for hours.
Yeah, put out at 7 in the morning and you get it at whatever time you get there. Why did she get the vegan one? Why is she stealing from... she doesn't need
Isn't that a good thing? Wouldn't it be? Isn't it good? As you, as a vegan, should surely be happy that she's 1/3 of her sausage roll intake is vegan.
I just felt
Not the whole thing
You've already
being
got
me.
2.
Well, I think it's a good thing. I think
It
she's
is.
doing. I think she's doing so. If she's having that every day, she's saving
Yeah.
a lot of animals.
But she also just eat 2 sausage rolls, not 3, and make one of them vegan. I just don't understand why she's eating 3
She is
sausage
on
rolls
her
and a
feet
steak
all
bake
day.
a day.
Anyway, we've covered a few people like this on the podcast.
Yeah.
I don't know on what episode, so I'm not going to be able to direct you back. But I remember there was a man that was eating every chip
Oh, true.
from a Weatherspoons.
Well, he was saving them and putting
He
them
was
in a little
saving
folder.
a chip in a folder. It doesn't look like she's been keeping her Greg's sausage rolls in any sort of
Containers.
photo album or anything. Yeah, I just think that she needs to get a fucking life.
I love that she's just like, God, I really wanted to do something in my life, and this is where I've ended up.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you've achieved it yet, dear. Well, good luck to you. Everyone, I enjoy people who decide to do something a bit ridiculous and just go at it. So, whilst I think it's stupid,
I
go
think
at it.
it's good to pick something that's ridiculous but also somewhat worth something. Also, how much do you want to bet as a bartender?
Yeah.
She works in Wetherspoons.
I 100% believe
No
that she
question,
does.
is
Not in a
there?
rude way. And also, yes, you would be rushed off your feet. Those places are
Oh,
massive.
mate, I'm not
And it's
sorry.
table service now, isn't it?
I have no doubt that she is rushed off her feet.
Yeah.
I don't mean to
You've got to
suggest
sling
otherwise.
the chips out. You got people ordering on the app now, so you've got to
You've
walk to
got
their
to
tables.
deal with all those fucking Wetherspoons humans.
Yeah.
Telling you
And
how
they're
good
massive.
Brexit is.
They're in old cinemas, so you've
Being
got all
mildly
ages.
racist.
Oh yeah, your heart will go up. All the shouting you got to do.
Oh, God.
I'll tell you what would calm her down, but not if you can't buy.
Drugs. Hard drugs.
Getting there.
Oh.
It's a food and there's also drugs. Mike Tyson cannot sell ear-shaped cannabis gummies in Colorado. This is a lovely news story. The state law prohibits marijuana edibles from being shaped like humans, animals, fruit, or other images that could attract children.
With an ear attacked to... Oh, my God, I've just realised
Yeah.
why he's selling them.
So I'm not that alarmed that he can't sell it in Colorado. That's not really the thing here. I'm intrigued at what he's selling. So Mike Tyson has an edibles company, apparently, called Tyson 2.0. And he has these little edibles and they're shaped like ears.
Because he bit
Harking
someone's
back
ear
to,
off.
Yeah, 1997 when he chomped someone's ear off in a fight. And now he's making money off of it. I think it's awful. He's making money off of it. He's had this business since 2016. He earns, apparently, $653,000. No.
653,000.
I feel extra
Siobhan,
hundred
you're
there.
mad. Yeah, I tell you what.
He earns more than $653,000 per month
Christ.
off of his edibles business.
That's probably a bit of a small drop in a big pond for Mike Tyson, though, isn't it? I mean, he must have so much money.
Yeah, maybe, but that's fucking insane. But, yeah, ear-shaped edibles, they are red, little chomped off ears. So he's going to get round it by reshaping them into teas for Tyson, so he can still sell them.
I wonder how the man who's eerie... I can't remember who it was.
Oh, I can tell you, bear with me. It was Evander Holyfield.
Yes. I wonder how he feels. I don't know if he's alive.
Yeah,
but I wonder
sure.
how he feels about his ear, being used by Mike Tyson as a...
As a drugs mule.
That's very strange.
Yeah, it is odd.
This is a thing in America, because there's been... cannabis is legal now, obviously, in I think almost every state, or maybe
Yeah.
not every, but a good chunk of it. And there's that podcast, last podcast on the left, they've started doing their own edibles.
Oh, really?
I think it's kind of like, it's probably a little bit like coffee was about 5 years ago. Everyone wanted their own coffee for a while. Now they all want to sell their own drugs.
Oh, if we had an edible, what would it be shaped like?
Breakfast, a full English
A
breakfast.
full English breakfast on a gummy.
No, you'd have to make a massive one. It'd have to be the size of that chip.
Oh, no, it could be like, you know those gummy burgers that come in separate bits and you put it all together? Or gummy pizzas?
Yeah.
It would be like that. You'd have a gummy breakfast and you put all the bits on that you want and you eat it.
Unfortunately, our country is very far behind everybody else in this respect, and cannabis is still illegal.
There you go. Oh, well.
Irish barista ends up in hospital after holding in farts around her boyfriend for 2 years. Cara Clark was at work when she developed extreme stomach pain on Tuesday and was rushed to hospital. The 19-year-old then learned she had an infection and would have to have her appendix removed before it burst, which she says was caused by her reluctance to break wind around her partner.
Okay.
She's been with her boyfriend for 2 years, claims that when he found out about it, he was dying with laughter, but it was a serious business. She's vowed to just let him out now. I'm pretty easy going with it. So I'm going to have to stop doing these fucking voices. I can't do an Irish either. I'm pretty easy going, other than the burps and farts. She says, this is wonderfully worded. I'm going to say that again. I'm pretty easy going, other than the burps and farts. I was at work on Tuesday and I had this real extreme pain in my stomach. I went to the doctor in hysterics and he referred me straight to the hospital. I was in so much pain I couldn't hold in my tears. At hospital I started blaming my boyfriend because I do always hold my farts in around him. And we've been together for 2 years and it's still the case.
This lovely, lovely lunatic who basically has just had appendicitis for who knows what reason,
Yeah.
has just decided, you know what, now's the time, I'm going to tell him off, because for some reason I'm holding in my farts, and I'm going to somehow blame him.
Well, yes, she was obviously told by medical professionals that she had got appendicitis as a result of holding in wind.
So that means that when you go in for appendicitis, at some point they must ask you, do you regularly hold in your farts? Because you get appendicitis for so many reasons. So for a doctor to have told her it's because you hold in farts, that sounds very odd.
I mean, she might be confused, who knows, but she's gone straight to the Irish Mirror, who apparently who actually have a specific comment section which they've set up for, do you have an embarrassing relationship story? So she might have made all of this up. I don't really know.
Just get in the papers.
She did post a video on TikTok.
Oh, gosh.
Telling off the boyfriend about how he made... Well, he didn't make her by the sounds of it. She just chose to hold in her farts for 2 years.
Yeah.
The clip went viral with over 220,000 views. Sorry, 100,000 views at the time of writing. I did not expect this response at all. I'd really only been having a crack with TikTok. Again, you really should say that in an Irish accent.
You can't. I only know one thing you can do in an Irish accent,
no,
and you can't say it.
I'm not going to try. But obviously, what I question about this more than anything else, I'm not someone that farts in front of other people very much.
No,
I'm not I'm not against it. I don't really care. But you can go somewhere else and fart.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? There's no need to. She's not held in a fart for 2 years. The boyfriend must have gone out at some point. She must have been able to go in the garden. Or something.
The garden?
I don't know, go for a walk.
Or just go in another room.
Or go to Greg's. You fart in Greg's all you like.
She probably keeps off the Greg's to try not to fart.
Go and fart in the other room if you've got a problem.
I imagine farts in public are the least of this place's problems. Mm-hmm. This article is about UK's toughest pub, where people got shot with crossbows and kicked sheep.
What?
Yeah, I know. I don't really understand it. But I'm bringing it up because it's in an area where I wonder if people from up north who listen to this might be able to tell us about, because it doesn't exist anymore, but I am intrigued by it.
Shamcityroasted@gmail.com.
Of course. You think you've been in some risky pubs before, but you might want to reassess that after you've learned about this old pub in Manchester that was once described as one of the toughest in the whole of Britain. It's gone now, but in its heyday it was famous for firing crossbows at each other and booting farm animals. The pub used to be in the central Manchester area of Collyhurst and was called Billy Green's. It shut in 2011, but it got a bit of a reputation back in the early 2000s. It was named rather aptly after a local boxer and pub landlord and garnered a reputation for being pretty dicey. It was featured on a show called The Toughest Pubs in Britain in 2004.
Well, that sounds like a classy piece of idea.
Which
I bet Danny Dyer presented that.
I feel like...
Is it before his time?
Oh, 2004, it might have been
one of them
time.
brothers from EastEnders then.
Oh yeah, Mitchell used to do it, didn't he? Ross Kemp even. He used to go to all these places.
I don't know who Mitchell or Ross Kemp are.
No, they were the Mitchell brothers, and he was called Ross Kemp in real life.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Is that the EastEnders brother?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
The one that, not the red one, not the one that looks like Spam, the other one.
I don't know.
The one that looks like Spam came to Hastings really recently.
This is not helping me.
It's not helping at all, don't worry. The show described, here we are again at the traditional British boozer, a local pub for local people, a centre for the community, a place to meet old friends and mix with like-minded souls. Fat chance! The first drinker says, I call it Beirut. If you've not got a car burnt outside your house in the morning, you've had a good night.
Why would anyone be proud of going to a pub that's like... and when he says Beirut, he's obviously never been to Beirut.
No.
What he means is it feels like a war-torn country. Why would that be a good thing?
Who knows? I mean, this one, if you think that's bad, the man continued, we've been in jail all our lives. So fucking what? You win some, you lose some. I've been stabbed 8 times, mate. 8 times and survived. So, these sound nice. The funniest thing I saw in this pub here was a mate of mine coming back from the United and Leeds away game. Coming back from the game, they nicked a sheep off the moors. They brought the sheep back to the pub on a lead. This other guy who was in the pub booted the sheep. Mean bastard.
That sounds horrible.
But his mate had a crossbow behind the bar. He shot the crossbow at the guy that booted the sheep, and it went right through his arm here. He's wriggling on the floor, so like you've got a sheep on the floor there, and you've got this geezer with an arrow in his arm. It was the funniest thing we've ever seen. We all hit the fucking deck, mate. It was just like so like funny. It was like wow. Unfortunately,
I'm fairly sure that these people don't speak with the accent. I appreciate that I've just misconstrued many accents.
Obviously, I can't do a Mancunian accent, and nor will I ever try. But unfortunately...
We've got to go up there in a couple of weeks.
Exactly.
We'll get fucking killed.
I'm not abusing.
Doing a live thing in Manchester soon.
Oh,
You're going to get fucking murdered if you start doing that.
Well, again, I'm not gonna do the accents, nor could I. Unfortunately, Billy Green's closed for the final time in 2011 and was bulldozed into a patch of wasteland shortly afterwards.
Gentrification gone mad.
I know, just disgraceful. But 2011, that does mean that the people we know in Manchester would definitely have been able to frequent this pub for many, many years.
Calling them old.
No, 2011. I mean, how old was I in there? 22. So he's been there.
You just said many, many years. That suggests that they've been going there for many, many years.
But you know, you might have gone there as a kid, maybe not this one, but you'd have been aware of pubs in the area growing up your entire life, and some people grew up there. I'm just wondering,
would anyone take their kid there?
I reckon if you no, I can imagine you've done the school run and you just want to drink. I don't know. Yeah? I can imagine kids being here. Maybe not in the evening, but I reckon anyway. Who knows? I went to some pubs in Blowfield and they were not as.
Did anyone kick a sheep?
No, I'm going to go with no.
You had to think about it much longer than I was expecting.
My mum put a cigarette out in my face by accident.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
That's all I remember. She was quite drunk. It's fine.
Why? What happened?
She just accidentally knocked into me and didn't realise that her hand was in my face.
You haven't got a mark or anything. It
was only little. It was like right in my eye.
She almost has your eye out with a flag. That's wonderful.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. There was loads of kids. It was great fun.
Like Danny Diablo's dog.
Oh, Danny Diablo's dog. No, let's not. We'll talk about a dog later. It's so cute.
We're almost definitely not going to, but I'm just going to leave it there.
Yeah, just leave it as that.
We've got a serious news story now.
Ooh.
At least as serious as a documentary project about a B-movie horror star and splatter rock band Haunted Garage can be.
Yay!
Definitely don't call it Garage.
Garage.
As we said earlier, we're going to be reviewing the film Surf Nazis Must Die. Whoop, whoop. And in a lot of ways that is a celebration of the fact that something wonderful is happening. A documentary about the wonderful Dukey Fly Swatter.
Yeah.
is currently in production, and they are raising money on the internet via Indiegogo to try and make this thing reality. An awful lot of the work has been done for it already, and the money is just to try and sort of finish it all off. Dukey Flyswatter, you will possibly remember from a couple of films that we've reviewed on this podcast.
Oh, yeah, we've done
he
quite
was
a
in lot. Yeah, he was in Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers, and he wrote Blood Diner. And he will also...
Sorry, guys, just going back, if you've not seen those two films, we review a lot of films on here, and some of them are, you know, deliberately bad, and some of them are absolutely amazing. And those two, Blood Diner, Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers, two of my favourite films in the world.
Well, this motherfucker's been in so many fucking amazing films.
Yeah.
I mean, he was in Sorority Babes and the Slimeball Bowlerama, which is certainly a favourite of mine.
Surf Nazis Must Die.
Surf Nazis Must Die, which we're going to be reviewing later on.
Yeah.
Nightmare Sisters, which isn't the greatest film in the world, but it's pretty cool. In a film called Star Slammer, which is fucking great.
And he was in a band called Haunted Garage.
And he was in a horror punk band who I don't know if that many people will know about them, really. If you're not a horror nerd, you probably don't know about Haunted Garage. But they were a band who were around in the 80s. Well, they're still going now, but they started in the 80s. And they were kind of not far off what you might think of when you think of Gwar.
Oh, okay.
But not without all the makeup. They were like a proper... They kind of came out of the death rock scene, I think, in LA. And their shows were just fucking chaos, mental, blood everywhere. Sort of like a horror movie on stage. And... they were wonderful, absolutely wonderful.
Was he already in horror at that point, or was the band the first thing?
I think he just got. I think he'd made a few films. So he made a few films under his real name. I'd like to see the documentary to find out exactly whether I'm right here. But my presumption has always been he made a few films earlier on under his real name, and at some point during that time, his name in all those films that I've seen him in changed to Dukey Flyswatter.
Yeah.
So I think that then. That would have probably been as a based on the band.
Oh, fair enough.
For this documentary, there is a trailer up at the moment, which gives you an idea of how amazing this film is going to be. It's got interviews with people from Gwar, from Green Jelly, from the Dwarves, from the Adolescents, from the Radioactive Chicken Hawks, from Penis Flytrap. It's also got a load of like really cool B-movie scream queens and stuff. Brinke Stevens and Michelle Bauer are in the trailer. It also looks like they're going to be talking to Lloyd Kaufman from Troma and Fred Olen Ray, who is that man that you really like. And it just looks like it's going to be fucking brilliant. So I'll put that trailer up on our YouTube playlist. I would encourage anybody, if they have any money, to give it to this, because I really want this to happen.
Yep.
He sent me on a little bit of a hole of looking
YouTube
into
hole?
some of Dukey Flyswatter's old stuff, some Haunted Garage stuff, and there is some wonderful things on YouTube which I will also put on the YouTube playlist, one of which I think might have blown Siobhan's mind.
Is it that interview with those two kids?
So I honestly think that, I really would, I always say this, we make this YouTube playlist for every single episode, and I will continue to do so.
Yeah.
But for this one, I would really, really recommend going and having a look at this one thing, which is from a public access TV show. I cannot remember what it's called.
It's pre-Wayne's World.
Oh, God,
It's what Wayne's World was taking the piss out of. Maybe even these two guys. I wouldn't be surprised.
I don't think they were well known enough. They were obviously just like two dudes from New Jersey.
But they're not even that...
very short shorts and like muscle tops. And they made this program where they were like, yeah, man, we'll say anything. And it's got like this, it's got the most fucking... I mean, the show itself, like ignoring the fact that Haunted Garage are on there, which is a whole nother amazing thing. But the show itself is so fucking cool. It's like they've made this little like title sequence where they're being chased around their like suburb in New Jersey, and they've done some graffiti, and then they get caught by a big man, and he sort of wags his finger at them and makes them clean it off. They're kind of like funny guys, kind of cool dudes, but not cool dudes at all.
Not at all.
Brilliant mullet haircuts, brilliant, like everything about them is fucking perfect. And they have Haunted Garage on there, and Haunted Garage are like this. Just Dukey Flyswatter and this other guy, who's like the bass player. I can't remember his name. They're fucking mental. Like they just going crazy,
having a lovely time.
Like there's no explanation for it whatsoever apart from that. But
the entire thing.
For some reason, at the very start of this thing, this man This man, what does he exclaim?
So the main guy, one of them's quite expressionate and is introducing the show, and he's just like, yeah, we're going to have this, we're going to have that, we're going to have this. And then the other guy just turns to the camera and looks at deadpan and goes, yeah, we like potato chips, you can't eat only one. And I'm just like, what? It made me even more, I can't do it as well as he did, but you've just got to watch this chubby little boy say, yeah, we like potato chips.
I think he's only chubby, by the way. He's not chubby at all. He's like a muscle man.
Is he just a muscle boy?
He's a muscle. No. But he's chubby because they've put some sort of prosthetic under him, so that later on in the episode, Haunted Garage can rip him apart.
Oh, really?
Honestly, this thing is in 3 parts. I'm going to put them all on the YouTube playlist. It is fucking unbelievable that it exists.
Yeah, we like potato chips. I love it.
So now all Siobhan says every day of my life is, yeah, I like potato chips. You can't only have one.
Yeah.
God help me.
It's so good.
Honestly, it's so good.
It's so
Watch
good.
this thing. But also support the life and slimes of Dukey Fly Swatter. Really, it's such a good cause. It looks like it's going to be such a fucking amazing documentary. So get on it.
They've got an Instagram page. Follow it because they're putting loads of updates on there. Every day I'm looking at it and there's just little things popping up that make me very excited.
Yeah.
Speaking of excitement.
Shall we go to the county of excitement?
It's been very exciting in Norfolk this week.
Yeah.
I mean, and I have heard about this story from a number of different people. It's hitting all the headlines in Norfolk, and that's not even about much, but we're all very excited. It's been like this in the past, when famous people turn up in Norfolk.
Oh, there's a famous person.
There's a famous person in Norfolk. In the past, we've had Johnny Depp turn up, and he bought a bath from somewhere.
Doesn't he live in Norfolk, Johnny Depp?
I don't know if he actually did end up buying a house there, but he did buy a bath, and that made the headlines once. But now...
I bet it was a really nice bath.
Oh yeah, it was from somewhere in Burnham Market. It was fucking expensive.
Okay.
But from Morrison's to Weatherspoons, why is John Travolta in Norfolk?
What's he doing in Morrison? Just doing his shopping.
Well, I've seen 2 stories about this. One is him sitting there having cream tea in Erpingham House, which is a very nice vegan, afternoon tea restaurant place. But as well as being spotted in that lovely place in Norwich, he has been spotted in Morrison's and Fakenham on April the 2nd, where he was meeting fans and taking pictures.
This is very recent.
This is very recent. He was also seen enjoying a meal in Weatherspoons in Dereham, the Romney Rye, on the March 31st. Very specific, because, everyone's thinking, did I see John Travolta? Probably not. Seeing this, I was in there that day. Fuck me, that probably was John Travolta.
Well, is that how it would have gone?
I imagine.
What was he eating in Weatherspoons?
A meal!
Yeah, but what?
One of them microwave meals. He's put a chip in his pocket to give it to that man. He's been listening to this and thought, oh, fucking hell, I probably want to start saving these chips.
I hope Travolta hasn't been on the line when we've been doing this podcast, because I'm pretty sure we've been quite mean about Scientology.
We've been, and his films.
And his films.
And that Scientology film.
Oh, yeah.
He was also spotted in the Tombland area of Norwich. On Sunday, he posted a video on Instagram of him and his daughter enjoying afternoon tea, saying they're in England celebrating her birthday whilst he is filming.
But what's he doing in a Weatherspoons?
It doesn't say much more than that.
There's no reason
picture of what he ate.
To our international listeners, Weatherspoons is somewhere that you really only would go if... I go there... Well, I don't go there a lot anymore. I used to go there a lot. But the only reason that you go to a Weatherspoons is if you're considering how much money you've got and how much money you would like to spend largely on alcohol.
Yeah.
We used to go to a Weatherspoons because more or less for the pint of beer...
The price of a pint.
What did I say? A pint of a pint?
Yeah.
A price of a pint of a beer, you would get a dinner.
You get a little dinner on the side.
For I think it used to be £5.50 or something.
5 something, yeah.
You'd get a burger and chips and a pint.
Yeah.
That's a bit more expensive now. But John Travolta...
Might have heard about it.
He's not, come on. He's not going there for... There's no reason to go to Weatherspoons.
He's not, maybe he's a bit hard up. Scientology's probably nicked all his money to make him a glorified person. And he thought, you know what?
Person.
I've heard about this beer.
I don't think Scientology's made him a glorified person. I think if anything, they've done the opposite.
Aren't they holding him hostage somehow?
Well, we're not really sure. But
we're not at liberty to say.
Quite possibly. He's had quite a sad little life, hasn't he, John Travolta?
Yeah, I feel for him, actually. He's lost all his hair now.
Has he lost his hair?
Well, it could be out of choice. I don't know. He looks like a bouncer You know, if you were going to put on a play and you were going to dress a man up as a bouncer,
Do you mean
you
like?
would dress him up as he looks.
Do you mean like the play bouncers?
No, annoyingly, I had that in my head. I didn't mean that necessarily. But no, if you, I don't know, if you were filming an episode of EastEnders and you thought we just need to dress up some man in an oversized suit and put him up there and say, oh, he's the bouncer, you dress him up like how John Travolta looks.
Are you telling me John Travolta's got a suit that's too big for him as well? Are you sure this is John Travolta?
He
and not
fills
just
it.
like,
I mean, he is filling this suit.
Is this just a gentleman tramp that
No,
they've
that's
decided
definitely-
is John Travolta?
That's definitely John Travolta. He's even put a picture up on Instagram now.
What did the people of Norfolk say about John Travolta?
Oh, they're very excited about seeing him. They are, definitely. They couldn't believe it at first. That's why these news stories... This is the third news story I've seen about it. Gary Middleton, he's a security guard, said, I didn't even go up to him. He just came up to me and shook my hand. We had a really
fuck
nice
off,
chat.
Gary. Fuck off,
Fucking
Gary.
Piss off. When I put it on my Facebook, everyone said I was mucking around, and they didn't believe it was true, but it was. And now, you know, egg on their face because everyone else has seen him. Siobhan Bevan didn't know there was another Siobhan in Norfolk. Honestly, I was probably about 21 before I met anyone called Siobhan. She's a lifelong fan of Grease, and she said it was great to meet Danny Zuko as she got a selfie with him. She told the news, I was in my local pub and we were literally just talking about him. And then he appeared across the road with his entourage. And I said, there is no way I'm letting this opportunity pass.
So he didn't just come up to he didn't come up to her and say, "Oh, you must be that person who really likes Grease,"
No.
like he did with the security guard.
Yeah. Oh,
you
no.
must be that security guard I've heard so much about. You know, I'm John Travolta. Do you want to take a selfie with me?
Oh, all right. Here's a little clue into what he was eating in Wetherspoons.
Oh.
Student Jamie Salter shared a selfie with Travolta. Oh, that's a poem, isn't it?
It would be if you said it right.
Yeah, well. Jamie Salter shared a selfie with Travolta from the Romany pub, which was that one I was speaking about from Deerham.
The Wetherspoons.
The Wetherspoons.
Yeah.
He spotted the Saturday Night Fever star with a group of men eating burgers and pizza.
He was with a group of men eating burgers and pizza.
I went over and I said, excuse me for disturbing your evening. I've just got a question. Is it John? I asked him what he was doing here, because you wouldn't expect to see John Travolta in Deerham. They told me he was here for a week and he was filming an old airstrip and that they were filming a Christmas movie.
Wow. I wonder if John Travolta went to Greg's while he was over.
Oh, well, I don't know. He went for some posh afternoon tea, like we said. He's very inspired by Wetherspoons. Maybe he will see Greg's.
I feel like it's the next step, isn't it, really?
This article does end with some choice endings. Travolta was widowed in July 2020 when his wife Kelly Preston lost her 2-year battle with breast cancer. And in 2009, Travolta's family was struck by tragedy when his youngest son, Jeff, died at the age of 16, having a seizure in the Bahamas.
So
The end!
There's no need. So it's like, oh wow, John Travolta was in Norfolk. All these people met him. This is really nice. By the way, his wife's dead and his son's dead.
Yeah! You're entirely correct. Throughout the article, they give clues to his films he's been in, talk about what a wonderful man he is, and then, end with 2 tragedies. You know, that's nice.
That's classic British media.
That is Norfolk storytelling to its fullest.
Well, with that in mind, Yvonne, I think you should maintain your Norfolk accent and introduce this next band, who are from Spain.
Oh my gosh. Apologies in advance, Nafra. Nafra being the band. This song is called...
Go on, I believe in you.
I don't. I mean, at least this Norfolk accent's going to get away from the fact I can't pronounce this fucking in any old language. Right. This band is called Nafra, and the song is called Visca el Punk Equi Elva Para.
Yeah, that's all right.
That's probably right.
Yeah.
I reckon that's right. And will our Spanish listeners tell me how good I am? This is from their self-titled album released last year. They actually released 2 albums last year. Ooh, fancy. And this is from the first. So this is Nafra with Visca el Punk Equi Elva Para.
Una única bomba que llaman la fosca. Vas patiats, n'estaràs, tu
hello to all our lovely Breakfast Punks podcast listeners. Did you know that you can now support us via our Patreon?
We have a number of different tiers that you can support us on, and if you give £3 or more, then you will get an extra monthly episode of this very podcast, in which you may hear such intellectual nuggets as these. What's the picture that you've taken of your penis where it looks at its very best?
Would you get hard?
What, have you won the lottery?
What's your controversial opinions? Social media's going to kill us. I quite like Gary Glitter's.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
If you could finger one thing, what would you finger?
Oh, you're such a twat.
I know. Please do a double fart.
Well, I think he accidentally got me in the nether region as well. And I was like, I don't know about this birthday treat, but it feels a bit weird. Daniel
Filth is on his first date there, furiously masturbating to someone's vaginal skin. Maybe I should have stuck with paedophiles.
So sign up now at patreon.com/Breakfast Punks podcast.
Thanks for your money.
Cheers.
Welcome back to Breakfast Punks podcast. We're now going to move on to our main topic of this episode, which is New York hardcore.
New York!
We are not going to try and tell you a full history of New York hardcore for a couple of reasons, I think. One, because it's just sort of too big. I didn't really know exactly where we would start, where we would finish.
Indeed.
And also, two, I think the history of New York hardcore is generally told by a huge group of people that just sort of say the same 5 or 6 sentences over and over and over again. And so whilst the story is probably very interesting, the way it's told by most of these people is so frustrating and annoying that we didn't really think that there was much point in concentrating on that. Also, lots of people know what the story is. I have a strange relationship with New York hardcore in as much as I fucking love the music, or a lot of the music, not all of it, including some of the sort of really trashy stuff that came later. But I find a lot of the people involved in New York hardcore somewhat less to my tastes.
They're not the easiest. They're definitely on the difficult end of enjoyable personalities, I would say.
So what we did was we watched a couple of documentaries about it.
We did.
And we're going to give you a very vague picture of New York hardcore, and then we're just generally going to sort of rag on them, make some points, talk about their psychologies, as we normally do. I feel like we should have a name for what it is that we do on the Breakfast Punks.
I mean, bitch about people is not what I'd like to call it.
No, I don't think that's fair. I think that what we tend...
Somewhere between psychoanalyzing and bitching.
Yeah, exactly. It needs to have a name. But
psycho-bitching? We can't call it psycho-bitching.
Well, we could. No, I think we should. There you go. We are not historians. We are psycho-bitches.
I think that comes up in this. Oh, God. So we're going to psycho-bitch about New York hardcore. We're calling it psycho-bitching. We're there. We're keeping that.
I don't really like the word bitch. Let's call it babble. Psycho-babbler.
Psycho-ragging.
Psycho-ragging.
You call it ragging on, so I was like,
that's good. All right, we're psycho-ragging the New York hardcore crew. What's up?
What's up? What the fuck is up? That's I've heard a lot. So yeah, as Dave said, we watched a couple of documentaries, one of which we'll talk about a bit more later, because it does give a really nice snapshot of New York hardcore scene from the 90s specifically.
Yeah.
But we watched one called, I think it was called New York Chronicles. It came out in 2017.
It's called the New York Hardcore Chronicles, the movie.
Is that what it's called?
That's what it's called.
Jesus Lord.
It has to be described, otherwise you wouldn't realise that you were watching a movie.
Well, maybe some wouldn't. I don't know. So we're going to use that one as the loose basis for the storytelling arc, and and discuss and psycho rag along the way. So New York hardcore sort of started in the 1980s, early 1980s. The wave of punk had kind of come and almost kind of gone at this point, but bands like Bad Brains and Reagan's Youth were appearing in New York. I think they were from New York and then moved away, or from outskirts.
Bad Brains came from Washington, and then they sort of quite famously moved to New York and brought an awful lot of the style. I mean, Bad Brains kind of started hardcore in Washington DC, and from that you got Minor Threat and SOA and all of that stuff, and then they moved to New York.
Yeah.
So they kind of started two scenes in a way,
There you go.
and they were the first band, I suppose, of New York hardcore, even though they weren't from there.
Yeah, and it's definitely the band that the other bands reference as being like early on influences. And so, yeah, the first kind of wave of bands started playing between 1980 and 1984. It was in a venue called the A7 Club, which was in the Lower East Side. And the main bands that kind of played there a lot were Agnostic Front, Urban Waste, Murphy's Law, The Psychos, Antidote, and Cause for Alarm, amongst many others. But they were the ones that I kind of nicked off of the big posters that they showed in the documentary quite a lot. An early scene in this documentary that we watched has Agnostic Front nowadays walking around the Lower East Side, which is where all these bands kind of originated from. The main New York hardcore bands came from. And they're walking around saying they weren't feeling very wanted in that area, that they kind of... I mean, I can't imagine anyone felt very wanted in that area at that time. It would have been so rough and run down and impoverished in general.
There's a lot of mythology about the Lower East Side, but I mean, I think unquestionably it was like incredibly, almost like bombed out.
Yeah.
All the pictures you see of it, I mean, all of the buildings had been sort of bombed out, and people were squatting there. There was lots and lots and lots of like crime, and definitely like there was lots of different sort of groups. There was a lot of like drug dealing and that sort of stuff, and like criminal activity that went on down there. But there was a big crust punk scene, there was a big squat punk scene, and then these guys were sort of like, they were skinheads, really.
Yeah.
That doesn't get brought up very much, but I mean they were absolutely like, there's a real parallel I think with this sort of English oi scene. And I think that unquestionably a lot of those bands influenced these bands, but also just generally I think in the fashions and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I mean it started as a skinhead scene, and it's not necessarily discussed in that way anymore.
No, I would
For
say...
obvious reasons, I guess.
Of course. I mean, I would say Agnostic Front definitely still don't shy away from saying that that's what they were from. I think they even sing that we're skinheads now or something when they're walking around Thompson Square Park. So yeah, they talk about not feeling very wanted. So they got this kind of community of people together, kind of united under the idea of skinhead. And yeah, they all played in that club, the A7.
Yeah. I mean, I think fairly early on they started playing CBG, because they did play other places, and there was a lot of venues, but it's difficult, certainly from the documentaries, it's quite difficult to pinpoint exactly when people started playing at different places. So there's Coney Island High was definitely a venue that a lot of people played. CBGB's, and they started doing Sunday afternoon matinees. That was relatively early, but I don't think not right at the very beginning. There's a place called Great Gildersleeves.
Oh yeah,
that they played a lot. So there were different venues, but I think the A7 was kind of slap bang in the heart of the Lower East Side.
Yeah,
and there was a recording studio there as well, and there was it was slightly more than just a venue.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on those early bands, Agnostic Front, for example?
So it's not really the New York hardcore that I particularly like, but I do. The thing is with all of these bands is Agnostic Front are obviously still going, Cro-Mags are still going. A lot of these bands are still around now.
Cro-Mags are not just still going, but your band are supporting them in a couple of months' time. Yeah. It's going to be fun.
But like so it's difficult to really think about Agnostic Front without taking into consideration all the things that they became. So I mean, Agnostic Front and Cro-Mags both, I think, did their best stuff, and we'll kind of get to this, when they started crossing over and doing more metallic stuff. And that was definitely where they became most like musically influential to other people, I think. So in that context, like I really like the early Agnostic Front. I don't think, if you compare, it's almost a pointless thing to do, but if you take the big scenes, the big sort of hardcore scenes of the time, the LA punk scene, DC and New York, I'd say New York is the least good.
Yeah.
But I think that it's not really because they weren't as good musically or whatever, although I got the impression definitely that these bands probably weren't as good musically. Like when they very first started out, they talked a lot about how they literally didn't know what the fuck they were doing. Like they'd break a drum skin and they'd go across the street and get a bit of cardboard from a pizza box and use that as a drum skin, stuff like that. Like they had no idea at all. And obviously a lot of early punks didn't have any idea about what they were doing. But I think that it was possibly more extreme here. I think these people, they really were like street kids, a lot of them. And they definitely didn't have any sort of musical training or anything like that. So in that context, you could argue probably that they literally weren't as good
Yeah.
musically. But it wasn't so much that. I mean, I think that can obviously lead to some really good punk and some really good hardcore, depending on who it is that happens to have sort of stumbled across it. But I think, honestly, and this is maybe something we're going to just keep going back to throughout all of this thing, the reason that I don't like New York hardcore as much as those other two scenes is because it seems so unartistic, and because of the attitude of the people that do it. The lyrics are fucking, for the most part, dreadful, particularly in these early bands. And there's just a certain, and I don't know exactly how to, maybe this is what we need to psycho rag on a bit more. But like, it definitely felt like a way less artistic scene, and that might be because there's a class difference to some extent between New York hardcore and definitely Washington hardcore.
Yeah, 100%.
Definitely LA hardcore. So you had these other two, again, to me, these are like the three main scenes that I think of, even though there's stuff going on all over the country. And there was definitely way more thought, philosophically and culturally, way more thought behind Minor Threat. And the Washington bands, way more thought behind Black Flag.
Yeah.
Way more, in LA it was much more political, and in Washington it was really political as well, but I think it was more personal political in Washington. Whereas New York hardcore just felt like, yeah, dude.
Yeah, it does, definitely. And I think you're right. I think you're tapping into like the Washington kids were all rich white kids. Their parents all worked in politics. They had loads of money. LA was varied, but they at least were thinking.
Yeah.
Whereas New York, I think, probably were the most largely, at least this early scene, impoverished group of the lot.
Oh, very much so.
By a long way. And they probably felt that. And their music has continued to be this kind of bravado, I will stick up for myself, fuck you, I'm harder than you. Because for a very, very, and they overplay it hugely, but for a very small, well, not small, how am I to say small, but for a portion of those people, that was realistic. They were, I think as much as John Joseph is a difficult man, he talks about being 13 on the streets, no family home, kicked out of all of the foster homes, on heroin, goes to jail, and he's 13. Yeah, of course, the mental health problems behind that mean, your lyrics are probably going to be, I'm fucking better than you, I'm going to go do kickboxing to learn how to be a big man, and my songs are going to be purely based in this inferiority complex of, I swear I can beat you up, I swear I'm going to be able to look after myself, because they've had to, or at least some of them have.
I think that was true of a lot of early punks, though. There's two sides to this, which is hard to pick apart in a historical way, because obviously, like, we weren't there or anywhere near that. I had no idea what it was like to grow up in New York or in Washington or in LA. So you only go by what you hear.
Yeah.
But I think that there's two sides to New York. On the one hand, the first thing that I think of to say would be, well, New York was a lot tougher than those other places. It was like, you could tell, and definitely geographically, like ignoring what people were there and what activities were going on, just looking at what New York looked like in comparison to like Georgetown in Washington or Hollywood,
the Lower East Side in the 80s.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's no question about it. It was a tough place. But there is another side to this, which is something that frustrates me a lot, which goes on throughout this entire. If you talk about any New York hardcore at any point in history, even now.
Yeah.
Even go to New York now and it's like so gentrified, it's like Disneyland. Maybe not all of it, but a really good chunk of it, definitely Manhattan.
Especially where some of the New York hardcore events get put on now.
Yeah, 100%.
Like in some really lush bits of the Upper East Side.
But people are still very keen to. There is a mythos. There is a mythos of like, in New York it's tough, so therefore we're tough.
Yeah.
Now there's truth to that, of course, but there's also definitely some acting going on there as well. Maybe not in those original people.
No, but now.
Or at least not back then. I feel like now, in those original people, there definitely is some.
Yeah.
I mean, Roger Murray. There's another documentary that we watched. I've read his book as well. And he's an all right guy, don't get me wrong, and he definitely had a really hard upbringing, really was a street kid and all of those sorts of things. But now he lives with a rich wife in California, has some kids, does Agnostic Front as a sort of to make a bit of extra money, and has another job that he enjoys. But you put a microphone in front of his face,
He's like-
and he's going to tell you about how tough everything is and how,
Yeah.
and talk about street justice and stuff. But it's like, well, that's fine.
Yeah.
Unquestionably, that was a part of his life, and it's not for me to say, that he's not telling the truth.
Yeah.
But definitely now, he's a 50, 60-year-old man
Doing
who
all right.
lives quite comfortably and
Yeah.
just, So I bring that up less about... Sorry, we've already jumped way ahead. I bring that up less probably about these guys
Yeah.
who definitely did live it. There's no question about that. And then what New York hardcore became, which was a bunch of people that slowly but surely, I think generation on generation, had much easier upbringings than the godfathers of hardcore.
Yeah.
And again, coming all the way up to today, like just over the course of time, people's lives they're definitely not street people after a certain point.
Yeah.
They're definitely not living these sorts of lives. But the message of New York hardcore has remained exactly the same.
Yeah.
Almost exactly the same. Almost
Yeah.
embarrassingly so. Like, it doesn't... All of these documentaries that we watched, it doesn't matter who it is or at what time in history or from where they came from.
Yeah.
If you put a microphone in front of their face,
Yeah.
they say one of the same 6 or 7
I
different
can
sentences.
name it. So in that documentary that we are sort of basing this on, New York Chronicles, they go to the Black and Blue Ball, which has happened for years and years and years now, and it's a celebration of everything New York hardcore, and they're talking to people outside, and it comes up throughout the documentary, and at one point they're like, sum up New York hardcore in 3 words, and they almost all use the same 3 words.
Yeah.
And it's like real, truth, and family.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, okay, you're just, and that's cool. I absolutely get it. But like, what does that actually mean to you? What does it actually mean?
Well, that Black
They're
and
just
Blue
told to
Bowl
say it,
thing,
or they're, it's just constant drummed into them. Like,
but it's almost like, it's almost, but there's 2 sides to that, because again, it's like, look, right, there's so many sides to that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
There's only 2.
We've jumped way far ahead, but like that Black and Blue Bowl is so weird, because to me, and I said this to you before we started talking about this, like, one of the things that it feels like when they're interviewing people outside, so I've seen a couple of different documentaries about those Black and Blue Bowls, or bowls.
I think it's bowls, actually. I think I said it wrong.
And so that is a hardcore festival that's being put on, currently,
Yeah.
and has been, like you say, for a number of years. And they get all of the old American hardcore bands, old New York hardcore bands specifically, mixed sometimes, like Rancid headlined one of them and stuff like. I mean, it's a big production.
Yeah.
Let's say. And that's fine. Like, it's no different to any other, no different to Counter Rebellion or whatever.
Yeah, and it's still an
fine.
independently run
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. There's nothing wrong with it whatsoever. But the people on the street that they interview, it feels a lot like they're cosplaying being tough guys from New York hardcore, and
Yeah.
that is particularly obvious in the fact that loads of them aren't even from New York.
Yeah.
And some of them are like German
And they're like,
or Belgian,
"Yeah."
but they still try and say those
What
same
the
words.
fuck is that?
Yeah, exactly.
And you're like, oh god.
And there was definitely one bit in that film where they did go around, and the idea was, I think that I don't know what they said to them all, but it was like the start of the film, and it was like, right, just say something about New York hardcore
Yeah.
for the start of our film. And they were, the first few were like, at least had New York accents or whatever, and they were sort of like, what the fuck is up? This is New York hardcore.
Yeah.
But then by the end of it got to like a middle-aged German, and he was sort of like, yes, fuck shit up.
I'm here
and like-
because I believe in the hardcore spirit
Yeah.
of New York.
And I don't doubt, by the way, I'm not saying that someone from
Sorry,
Germany...
we're being really awful with our accents.
No, but someone from Germany absolutely could be just as, just if not more, definitely more legit than all
Yeah.
of the other people. I'm not suggesting that, but it's just that it's not the fact that like someone from Germany is saying I'm into hardcore. That's obviously totally fine. It's that they're very specifically taking on the role
Yeah.
of New York hardcore.
Yeah.
And it's really odd because, again, throughout all of these things that we've watched, apart from a few people, basically, apart from Youth of Today, 3 members of Youth of Today are the only ones who don't necessarily do this. Porcel,
and 108 maybe.
Ray Capo, and to some extent. Yeah, but that's like way later, so I suppose it's different. But Porcel, Ray Capo, and Walter Schriffels all are obviously very educated and very thoughtful people. Everybody else, it almost doesn't matter if they're not from New York or they've come in from the suburbs or whatever. They'll all admit to that. None of them are pretending.
Yeah.
They're not saying, yeah, we grew up on the Lower East Side. They're saying, yeah, we're from Long Island or
Yeah,
whatever.
from
But then
Connecticut.
what the fuck is up?
What
and it's
the
like,
fuck
well,
is up?
yeah, well, you're from Baltimore or whatever. Or,
Also, it's something about the cosplaying element of it as well. To all the bands, like I'm just going to liken this to a show that I saw very recently. There's lots of young bands that are influenced by the later... We need to get to this later bit of hardcore, so we will. But all influenced by the later, shouty, more preachy side of this New York hardcore scene. And there's just learnt phrases that I'm just like... What the fuck is that about? Like, we just pretty much... What the fuck is up, everybody? And it's just like... We're all fine. You asked us that literally in the last break of the song. You can stop asking us how we are now.
I don't think that's 100% from New York necessarily, but it's definitely influence. You can follow. So I think a lot of those bands that are around now.
Yeah.
And by the way, we're not going to try and deal with
Christ, no,
New
I don't
York
even know who's
hardcore
around
now
now
or anything. I mean, I know loads of bands that were influenced by it, but New York hardcore as a scene, whilst it obviously still exists, there's hardcore bands from New York.
Yeah.
I think when you say like New York hardcore, you're talking about very specific things.
Yeah, the 80s and the 90s
which is what we're going to cover, really. But there's so many aspects to that cosplay as well. I mean, dancing is a huge element of cosplay that goes on in New York hardcore and in hardcore in general. But I think that the hardcore in general bit, we're probably going to keep referring to this as New York hardcore, even though it's not entirely their fault. But I think that the hardcore in general bit, which is really from the late 90s onwards, even mid-90s probably onwards, was so influenced by New York hardcore. What hardcore became wasn't influenced anymore by Black Flag or Minor Threat.
It was,
the one that people got influenced by was New York hardcore, and that became...
What hardcore was.
And then, definitely there was a massive scene in Belgium, a massive scene in the UK, a massive scene in the UK, that was all like very much this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the cosplay that goes on in the dancing is outrageous.
The dancing.
I mean, whoever thought to themselves, I'm going to do a karate kick because I have I have to do a karate kick now because I like this music. Where those two things got twinned fucking blows my mind. I will never understand. I mean, you could argue that about almost all dancing. Of course, all dancing is just people doing stupid things with their bodies to a beat, right? And I accept that.
To a beat.
No, it's not to a beat. It's not even in. Yeah, it's not, is it?
It's not dancing.
It's totally fucking.
But my favourite thing about the dancing, inverted commas, it's that they kind of like are sitting there bopping to the music, not bopping to the music, sorry, I'm not 80, but they're kind of like nodding their head to the music, everything's in time, and then all of a sudden it's as if they like something just switches in them and they're like, I now need to punch the floor, and then they just start fucking hammering the floor, doing arm whirlies with their arms, doing karate kicks, doing big spins. No one else around them is allowed to look in now, and it's just like, but you're not. You were enjoying the music, and now I don't know what you're doing.
Well,
some demon took you over, and now you're. And I appreciate. I just really sound like an old person. It's just interesting to me. It's obviously, if you ask people who do it, they'll be like, it's an expression of the emotion and the energy that you feel when you listen to this music, and it's just really good to get it out. But that all just kind of sounds like bullshit the bravado of what it is, which I don't understand.
I've never experienced an emotion that's made me immediately want to karate kick. That's the thing that confuses me.
Not for a good reason, and not because I'm enjoying the band.
There was. I mean, we can talk about the dance in no end, because obviously there's so. We should probably acknowledge, because I feel like this is all going to get lost, because we're obviously going into a proper psycho rag.
Yeah.
But the dancing is somewhat problematic. There obviously is an aspect of like not welcoming people smaller than you into a place where everyone's kicking.
Yeah.
That's not 100% based on gender, but it is. Gender definitely plays something into that. Mm. And there's loads of issues about dancing, right?
Yeah.
But I remember, in the late 90s, one of the arguments for like violent dancing at shows is that you have all of this pent up aggression. On a Friday night, you go out. You see your favourite band, you all basically kick the shit out of each other, but it's in a controlled way and in a sort of friendly way. You kick the shit out of your best mate and then you're hugging at the end.
Like Fight Club.
Like Fight Club, yeah. And, like a gangbang.
Fight Club gangbang. / the New York hardcore scene.
They all get the same thing out of you, really. But like, the point being that I can sort of see that argument. I don't agree with it necessarily.
Yeah.
But I can see that there is a need for that and that some people can get something out of that. The problem is obviously that it excludes certain people.
Yeah.
So I can understand the idea of listening to like really heavy, really violent music and dancing in that. We're like getting carried away with it. But getting carried away with it in a way where you're kind of at least, I don't know, the difference with like, let's say moshing.
Yeah.
Right? Moshing is kind of an outdated concept as well, but people definitely still do it.
Yeah.
And if you used to go to a big gig and everyone was sort of moshing and you came out with a few bruises, but you were all together.
Yeah.
Like, there was a certain element of, like, yeah, you were getting pushed a bit and you were jumping into people and they were jumping into you.
Yeah,
But
you might fall over and grab someone and then
Yeah.
they'll pull you back up and it's all a bit like joysticky. You don't feel too thrown about.
But that is definitely, for all of its wrongs, is definitely a really communal thing to do.
Yeah.
You know? So you can see what people get out of that.
Yeah.
It's like, I go to this gig, all these people I don't know, but we're all immediately friends as soon as the music starts,
Yeah.
and it's a really communal thing. Doing karate kicks in the middle of a room is not a communal thing. It's an individualistic thing, and it's
Yeah.
a performative thing.
And it means I don't give a fuck about who is stood next to me because I'm going to, like, my limbs are long, I'm going to flail them about. I'm not even looking to see if I'm going to hurt anyone. And if you don't want to get hurt, it is your responsibility to get out of my way.
But you could argue the same with Moshin, though, in fairness. You're right, 100% right, and it probably is more extreme a version of that. But you could almost argue that with any kind of angry dancing.
Yeah, but this is so big and violent.
But like I say, it's a performance.
Yeah.
It's saying, look how high I can kick my leg.
Yeah.
And that's that's the bit that I just don't get.
Look how good I am at picking up change. And also, when you watch the videos of these things happening, if you go to, I mean, I would personally, and I know the music's really brilliant and what have you, but like modern day hardcore shows and festivals are not in my interest. Like the videos of that Black and Blue Bowl.
Yeah.
There's a fucking huge hole where 3 people or 4 people are karate kicking, but that hole could have been filled with 100 people, but they've all had to squish to the sides to avoid muggins in his big t-shirt and his trousers falling down, kicking his leg as high as he can, whilst the other one's swinging his arm in front of his head. It's just like, what are you doing? Like, there's all this space, but everyone's had to move. I just don't understand how... I don't really enjoy when people don't think of other people that well, and I feel like this is the most obvious version of I don't give a fuck about everyone else. Hilariously, I'm singing a song about unity and how much we really look after each other.
Yeah, well,
that's what the culture pretends that it's about, which it probably is about, but I just think it's really interesting, especially when you get into the bands that preach straight edge and veganism, and I'm just like, cool, I'm looking after myself, I'm looking after animals, but fuck you, I'm going to kick you in the head if you come anywhere near me.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely was something that came more about in the 90s. Yeah, it boggles my mind.
Yeah, and it's funny to watch.
It is hilarious to watch. I mean, yeah, there is that.
I love that the people who are doing it, like you say, it's performative, and they're obviously really... Sorry, apologies to anyone who does spin kicks and windmills at shows who's listening, but also, like, question your life, because you do look funny. And the thing is, maybe you are really good at it, but it is funny. I just don't get it. Like, I just look at it and I'm like... I don't know. We went to a show the other day where there's people doing it, and I'd never really seen it that close up. There was only about 20 people in this fucking room, and 5 of them were doing this, and I was just like, this is fantastic. I don't understand it, but that's fine.
That disconnection that you were talking about between, yeah, like you say, something like preaching veganism and then kicking people in the head.
Yeah.
There's a lot of disconnection. I think this is in hardcore generally, but let's make it specific to New York hardcore just so that we stick on the topic.
Yeah.
There's loads of that sort of disconnection. Like, in really simple things, there's loads of interviews throughout both these documentaries that we watch where people complain about violence at shows.
Yeah.
But then the same people laugh about how they got in a fight at a show the night before, in the same interview, without being able to consider the fact that those two things are opposing.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's quite a lot of stuff like that go on in these people's heads where they just disconnect. You know, you could argue, for example, if you're going to do karate kicks in a pit and then complain about someone else fighting, it's a little bit like, well, you're an idiot. But I can see that culturally in your head you can disconnect those two things, because you can say, well, I'm not trying to hurt anybody, I just like to do karate kicks because that's my dance style. But it's totally different in so many of these documentaries. There was just so many people. There was that bit they shoehorned in about how there were women in New York hardcore.
Oh my god, I hated it.
And unquestionably, there were a lot of women in New York hardcore, but there were not a lot of women in bands. But there was a few bands that were
at the beginning.
And they weren't really hardcore band sounding necessarily, but they were around and they played with some of these bands. And my guess is, I've never heard of them. That doesn't mean anything, but my guess is that they grabbed at certain bills where it's like, look, there was a band with girls on it on this bill.
Oh, what, in the documentary?
In the
Grabbed
documentary,
at it, yeah.
because it was definitely like sort of shoehorned in. But a lot of their attitudes to things, even there, was like so confusing. It was sort of people.
There was only one person that made some sort of sense in the end. I felt like they were fed or brainwashed into saying what they were saying.
I think they were just idiots too, though, to be honest. I know what you're saying, but that's unfair. That gives them the benefit of the doubt. Basically, I think, particularly in that first documentary, everybody that was interviewed, male, female, black, white, doesn't matter, they were all idiots.
Yeah.
So I don't think you need to make excuses for just because they happen to have a vagina.
No, that's true, it's true. So I wrote down a couple of things that they said. One of them was saying that there's an intrinsic maleness to hardcore, and insinuated that all girls are attracted to it, know that that's it, and basically you get what you ask for when you turn up to these shows. You're going to something that's male, so if you get kicked in the head by a male doing a karate kick, then it's your fault for turning up.
That was a very Gen X attitude. But also, by the way, I think that they were not...
Well, this was in the argument for it being inclusive, and I felt that wasn't a very good example.
No, not at all. But what I was trying to say is I don't think... The people weren't karate kicking at the point that you're talking. They're talking about much earlier on, but that doesn't really matter. The semantics.
True.
But mentioning.
They said that it was all inclusive, but they were more honest about it being more inclusive at the beginning. They said there were girls, there really were girls, there were girls in bands. Like you say, they pulled out some of the posters of some of the gigs, maybe the 3 that they were there at, who knows. But then they were the ones who were saying, but it did change. And it was definitely a brotherhood, not a sisterhood, is what they named it as. Even in amongst the girls that were there, they just were there because they were down with the boys. They weren't there because they were girls. All the girls that said they fit in said they fit in because they were looked at as boys, which meant that they joined in, got kicked in the head and did everything. There was no thinking that people might not want to do this. But yeah, and then they said, you know what, it did eventually get ridiculous and stupid, and actually the violence was against each other, and it was just like, what are we doing? This is silly.
But the bit that I was more referring to, I mean, all of that is totally true. The bit that I was more referring to as well was that they talked about all of that stuff, and then they talked about how they were kind of women that were in the scene. And then just at that point, they then decided that they had to tell this story about how they actually beat loads of people up as well.
Yeah,
that was like this real bit of disconnection, whereby it started off by saying, oh yeah, there was all these tough boys, and we went anyway, and all of those things. But then they suddenly start saying, and of course we were tougher than most of the boys, and if you said something wrong to a girl, then you wouldn't just get one girl attacking you, we'd all pile in and we'd all beat the shit out of you. And it's like, why are you celebrating that?
Yeah,
you're also the problem. You don't get a pass just because. Yeah, you don't get a pass for beating someone up just because you haven't got a dick.
But then I feel like
so weird.
I think it is a male-centric idea of aggression, and I think they're choosing to follow it.
Yeah,
like, you know what I mean. Like, I don't think it's a. I mean, I'm just being very gender biased here, I'm sure. But their way, it's just, how can I fit in? The way I fit in is these boys are kicking the shit out of each other. Like you say, the way I'm going to fit in is also, we're girls and we can kick, we're just as tough.
What the fuck is up?
What the fuck is up? I'm going to kick your shit.
I don't know. I just think it's weird because it's another example of like somebody just disconnecting themselves completely, complaining about violence, and like having this whole bit in the documentary where they sort of shoehorned this thing in and said, oh, this wasn't just boys fun, this was also girls here. They obviously felt a need, because it's made relatively recently, they had a need to try and paint New York hardcore in a certain way that it obviously wasn't. But then they couldn't even help themselves. They couldn't even just say, these boys were all being idiots, and like we didn't feel that safe, but we started our own bands anyway. And it's like, well, that's fucking inspirational. That's amazing. No, you couldn't end it there. It had to also be, and then we beat loads of fucking people.
Yeah, we beat her up. I'm like, oh god. We will return to other disconnects in the New York hardcore scene in a little bit, but let's move back to the music, because that's kind of what it's meant to be about. So then we started to see the beginnings of these crossover bands, which crossover means crossing over with thrash and metal in general, because basically metal kids were starting to come to these shows. Some of the bands were already a bit metallic sounding, and as much as I think Cro-Mags were noted to be a band the heavy metal kids kind of liked. And it was thought of as ballsy for these metal kids to be turning up looking so metal at these shows. Which is how they described it.
Again, the problem with these stories are they all come from these goofs who all want to sound tough. But everything I've ever read, it does sound a little bit like if you turned up to a hardcore gig with long hair, you probably did get a bit of trouble.
So, well, yeah, and I think in some way they were respected for still going, because I think metal kids still went, and there was more and more of them turning up. And it started to influence the bands, because some of the bands that started around this time weren't so influenced by the things that the first bands were influenced by, and were getting a bit more into, I think Kill 'Em All was noted to be a very big influence on the bands at this point. And so you started to see more metallic sounding hardcore, which begins probably the kind of hardcore that you really prefer.
Yeah.
It at least starts it going down that hole. A big one, Biohazard, probably the main one.
That's way later.
Oh,
I mean,
is
the first bunch of crossover bands start pretty much with Agnostic Front releasing Cause for Alarm.
Oh, of course.
And Cro-Mags. And then there was a bunch of bands that kind of then started around about that time that were specifically crossover bands, like Crumbsuckers. The band called Carnivore with Pete Steele from Typo Negative. Whoop Whoop, Pete Steele. R.I.P.
R.I.P. He wasn't a
He's
juggalo.
not a juggalo. He's got a lovely big cock.
Oh, massive penis. Bless him.
And then as a result of that crossover thing going on, there was a bunch of younger kids who all decided that they wanted to kind of sound like the original sound of hardcore.
And that's kind of where Youth of Today come in. They wanted to go back to lots of different things. They didn't really enjoy the metal stuff. They said they didn't really enjoy the idea of talking about Acid Rain. Well, I think Acid Rain was the name of the band, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but they didn't want to talk about all the weird, like, wonderful sorcery and stupidness.
I think metal bands did also sing about Acid Rain.
Yeah.
I see where the confusion
I was
came.
like,
Yeah.
is he talking about Acid Rain? But, you know, it kind of like, it wasn't about anything anymore. And so Youth of Today were like, they wanted to take it back to it being about something, a more primitive sound. It spoke to more people. It had a message, whereas the crossover metal stuff didn't really. It was more a continuation of, we're really tough, or this is just generally life.
Yeah, and I think that message was straight edge for the most part, and then later on it was kind of a spiritual message. But
universal tolerance and love, I've got written down.
There you go.
Which is what Ray Capo said, and I believe him.
He's a good boy.
A good boy.
But yeah, I think the straight edge thing probably came from a lot of different reasons. One was that there was like obviously loads of bad drug habits. I mean, it kind of follows the trajectory that almost all hardcore scenes follow, whereby they're all really exciting in the early 80s, then people get into drugs, lots of people drop out, and then some people decide, you know, like in LA, an awful lot of punk and hardcore bands sort of became a little bit cop rock. And, you know, and so like it just depended on where you were, I guess, geographically as to what terrible thing you took on. And I think that in fairness, the New York hardcore stuff, the crossover stuff, definitely was the better of that. Like, you know, mixing Slayer or early Metallica with Agnostic Front or Cro-Mags, that's fucking great.
Yeah,
that worked really well. But yeah, there was a lot of drug problems, and a lot of these kids, specifically Youth of Today and Gorilla Biscuits less so, but to some extent Gorilla Biscuits, were coming from outside of New York. And like we alluded to earlier, they were probably more educated, they were from middle class backgrounds and what have you. But they did all move into New York, and
at a time where it was still rough as
still rough, yeah. And brought this straight edge message and sort of brought it back to what, you know, they said, like, brought it back to kind of more what Minor Threat were doing and that sort of stuff.
Well, someone wrote, I can't remember which person said this, but they said, I may have missed Minor Threat, but this could be mine. I think it was Mike Judge.
Yeah.
I think he had you today, and he
was
was
very
just like,
serious about these.
He is, isn't he? And he was like, holy shit. Because, that's it, because he's saying he'd fallen out with music altogether.
Yeah.
He was done with it. He didn't like the scene. Yeah. We watched a documentary about him where he's very dramatic.
Yeah, that's I'll put that on the YouTube playlist, actually. We won't talk about that too much. But yeah, Mike Judge is an interesting character, and Vice, I think Vice made a documentary about him.
Yeah, and he goes on to be very serious in this scene. But yeah, he dropped out, and then he had Youth of Today, and he was dragged along to a show, didn't want to go, heard them, and he was like, holy shit, here we are. And does he end up joining them for a bit?
Yeah, he plays drums. So I mean, that whole Youth Crew stuff, to me, that is, if I was to pick a part of New York hardcore that was the most exciting, best thing, that to me is it. Like Youth of Today, Gorilla Biscuits, I think Gorilla Biscuits are one of the best hardcore bands ever. Yeah. Pretty much. But yeah, Youth of Today, there was Judge, Underdog, Bold, Warzone, like those bands. And they didn't all necessarily sound exactly the same, but those bands that came out like in the sort of later 80s in New York, I think, like, but the problem, if it's a problem, And maybe we shouldn't go into the straight edge thing too much because it's another thing to unpick a lot. But the problem was that they brought this really good message.
Yeah.
Whatever you think about straight edge, I'm not saying a really good message like nobody out there should drink, obviously, but I just mean like, you know, it was a positive message, there's no question. But what it led to in the later 90s was hardline. And also what it did was it set up this kind of fashion thing, which is definitely still rearing its ugly head and probably will never go away in hardcore. And this is another example of like, not just New York hardcore, but what hardcore became. Yeah. This uniform.
And it still is.
And still is. This sort of uniform, both in the context of what you wore, but also uniformity of music. Different, the watch.
Go get the Swatch watch get the with correct the X watch, on it.
Get the correct trainers.
Wear Champion clothes, or Tommy Hilfiger if that's in at the time.
Yeah, it all became very like brand, and it was. I mean, all of that stuff is so non-punk as well, and obviously that doesn't mean anything in 2022. But I think in the late 80s, like saying Nike was cool, even in the 90s, like it never added up to me. It's totally anti-punk. It's like a corporate version of.
Like, whatever punk you follow or pertain to have a part in, like, anti-corporation is pretty much the, like, if you're into corporation, then you're not punk at all.
I don't know if that's necessarily true now.
Not nowadays with, people sipping their margaritas in posh bars and what have you, but I just think it...
Corporate margaritas?
I don't know, maybe there's corporate ones, I don't know, but you know what I mean, like, we're in a world where you can still do it, it's harder, but,
Yeah.
You don't have to be a victim to corporation and stuff. So it's just really strange that this A existed and B still exists for sure. Like
I think more so. I think it's more so now.
I still see that watch everywhere. I was just going to say, harking back to Mike Judge, he comes along and starts Judge. Very, very good band, but their message is
definitely more
hardline. Yeah. Basically, I'm straight edge, go fuck yourself.
But in comparison to like what came next, which let's go on to what came next very quickly, like things like Earth Crisis, like the whole Victory Records stuff. Yeah. Judge is not hardlining compared to what happened.
No.
In the late 90s, if you went to a straight edge show, and I was about to be so generalised. Sometimes people went to straight edge shows, drank a beer, and got beaten up for it. There used to be people like proper aggro at you, asking you if you were a vegetarian.
Yeah.
Stuff. Like, and even I remember that in fucking London, so I can't imagine what it was like in New York. Judge was a hardline band for the time, but really all it was he was on tour with Youth of Today. They were saying about this straight edge message, and they weren't really getting very much respect from some people, and sometimes people come and take the piss out of them.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Fuck this.
Yeah.
If people take the piss out of me, I'm not gonna take it."
Yeah.
And that's not. I'm not saying he's a hero, but that's not that bad. It's not as bad as you haven't got an X on your hand.
Yeah.
So me and all of my mates are going to beat you up.
Yeah.
Which
also
is an dramification of what actually happened. But there was an element of that. There were bands who, and still are to some extent,
100%.
who are like Nazis. They're Nazis. They're not necessarily racists.
They don't have a swastika, they have an X.
Yeah, no, totally.
No, it's true. I think this is what Youth of Today ended up breaking up over, and they say it in that documentary. One thing they said was, it became I love me and I hate you.
Yeah.
And you see that to this day. We went to a gig the other day where middle of the set, a man was just like, go and beat someone up. And you're just like, what the fuck are you talking about?
But that's cosplay.
It was huge cosplay. But the thought that is still like, why... Screaming to a room full of people that are definitely thinking the same as you, fucking get to the front or I will fucking beat you up. You're just like, what is wrong with you? What is actually wrong with you? You're cosplaying an arsehole. Maybe you are an arsehole. But what you
as
do...
Ray Cappo described it, buffoonery.
Buffoonery!
And I think he absolutely knocked it on the head. And of course, so Youth of Today, and then later, Ray and Porcell went on to be in Shelter. They were Hare Krishnas. They weren't during most of Youth of Today, but they were, and a lot of these bands, a lot of Hare Krishna sort of worked its way into the New York hardcore scene, but then so were the Cro-Mags. Like some of the earlier bands, they all became fucking Hare Krishnas.
The Cro-Mags become Hare Krishnas as well.
And it was so it's quite confusing because that is a message of, I'm not a religious person, and I don't agree with the religion, and I'm certainly not saying Hare Krishna's great, but the message of, that's where the veganism and vegetarianism thing came from mostly in hardcore, and it's where they don't preach They definitely don't preach violence.
No, they definitely don't.
You know, like, and it's so. That's another one where it's just this total disconnect where there's all these fucking guys going and doing cage fighting, but also being Hare Krishnas.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what? I don't understand why in your brain at some point you don't think to yourself, these two things don't really add up.
No, they don't.
Like me,
go do a karate kick.
me talking about how tough I am. Surely that goes against like the Krishna principles of. More or less like I am nothing.
I am nothing. I give myself my energy.
My physical form is nothing.
Exactly.
It's so bizarre.
It is bonkers. Sorry, and then now I feel like it's a good time to bring up, what did that man say at the 108 show? He's like, join us in this transcendental jam or something. Yeah. And then it's just a fucking heaviest noise I've ever heard, which they all claimed was a form of meditation anyway. But in fairness, they're genuine. They were legit.
Well,
they weren't saying legit.
One of them wasn't. So let's move on now. We'll move on to the 90s now. I don't really think we've covered the 80s, but we did warn you at the start of this.
This is going to be a psycho rag.
We were not going to tell a history. We were just going to talk generally. But we then watched a film that's just called New York Hardcore, which was made initially in 1995, but came out. I don't know if it was shown back then, but it ended up coming out in the mid 2000s. And so as a result, there's a documentary where it catches up with a load of people that are active in hardcore, and then on this DVD, there's then a load of which are almost more interesting interviews with them 10 years later.
Oh yeah.
So I think we just go through some of these bands and have a little talk about them.
Yeah,
I mean, just on a general point, is it worth pointing out that in 1995, those chin beards where you just had like a rectangle
those soul patchy things.
Yeah, so they were really big. A lot of the people that were from the original scene and then were being interviewed later on, they had those beards where they're like really carefully tailored. Like they were all fat, but just around all of their different chins, they just had like a line.
Oh, that
of
little
hair.
nice line, yeah.
I don't know if that's important.
Very barbered.
Celtic tattoos were obviously really big, and I presume they've all covered them over in that same way that David Havoc has covered over all of his Nightmare of Before Christmas tattoos.
What's he done? He must
He's
have just blacked out his arm.
He's blacked them out. I don't know if any of that's important, but I just wanted to mention it really. Here's some of the bands in this documentary were kind of big at the time. Some of them, I mean, I suppose they were probably of a similar size at the time, but some of them went on to be known more. And I was definitely aware of some of them at the time and not others. I don't know. That doesn't mean anything necessarily. We'll start with 25 to Life.
Oh, Rick to Life.
Rick to Life.
Oh, I liked him.
So he is quite a nice man.
I get the impression he's not liked by many.
I thought that, well, no, he doesn't seem to be very popular. I'm not really sure. 25 to Life were kind of like what I would have considered in the mid to late 90s a big New York hardcore band at the time.
Yeah.
I have nothing to base that on really, but they were touring a lot. They did an awful lot. They released some albums, and I quite liked them at the time. Although now listening back to them, I'm not really sure why, because his voice, he sounds like a cat coughing up a hairball. It's a very unusual voice.
But he knows
it's quite impressive.
Yeah,
it's quite a cool voice
is.
in a way, but it's not nice to listen to.
Someone says it to him and he's like, do you mind that no one knows what you're saying? He's like, well, that's what the lyrics are for.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I know, but it's hilarious how much it doesn't sound like a word. But good on him.
Rick to Life is probably one of the biggest influences on Haste. So I'll just tell you a very quick story.
Is it genuine? Sorry, I thought it was bullshit.
Genuine. No, so not musically or lyrically or anything
or
in any way, shape or form.
Because none of you look like him.
No, but when we were recording our second EP, we had a conversation with Sam, the guy that recorded it, who likes a lot of hardcore, and obviously I do too, and we were talking about, for some reason, 25 to Life. And he said that Rick to Life had just cut all of his dreadlocks off and sold them on the internet to people in little coffins, and we were all laughing about this, and we had a song that didn't have a song title, and so someone suggested calling it Don't Judge Dread Coffins, and so that was the first stupid song title that Haste have ever got, and now I'm pretty sure we're only known as the band with stupid song titles.
Fuck's
and
sake.
that was the one there.
Rick to Life.
Rick to Life.
No, do you know what? I take it back. I don't like him. I thought, you know what? I like this man. He's selling everyone's stuff on concession stands everywhere he goes. Nice boy. Nope.
Rick to Life did a bit of cosplaying, I think. This is totally just a theorem, so I might have got this completely wrong. A bunch of these people did to some extent. But he was less of... So a lot of the people in this documentary in the mid-90s are like very much almost like hip-hop guys. Like they talk in that way. He obviously wasn't. He was obviously a suburban child who loved hardcore. He definitely... I don't think you can question. He did so much stuff, and you can tell from the documentary, like, he was the one who was promoting all of these bands.
Yeah.
He when he went on tour, he was taking other bands' merch with him and
he had a
selling it
concession
and stuff.
stand where he
Like,
sold everyone's.
so he was like super keen, but he was obviously from the suburbs. And he tells a story about how he used to be on heroin and then he ended up in prison. And that was why the band was called 25 to Life. Obviously, he didn't get 25 to Life, which I think is what you get for murder. But I did think that story didn't quite ring true. And I feel like probably what happened was he used to like... He probably sold marijuana at school, got caught, probably spent like a bit like you, like one afternoon in a police cell, and then decided that he was going to base his entire persona on that.
See, I took from it
not.
otherwise, and maybe this is me being too forgiving of a character. So they say to him, "How was your childhood?" He goes, "Oh yeah, you know." Because I thought, as much as most of these people upplay their toughness,
Yeah.
a couple of people downplayed it, and they upplay their adult toughness, but they downplay any of the things that led to them being, an unfortunate person. They speak to Freddie Madball, and they're like, "How's your childhood?" He was like, "Oh yeah, real normal. I mean, I got to sing with, Agnostic Front, but other than that, it was really normal." And I'm like, I bet your life wasn't that normal.
It wasn't normal.
Yeah, I bet you had a horrible childhood. And I thought the same with Rick, because I felt that he was... Because they said to him, like, "How was your childhood?" He goes, "Yeah, no, it was all right. Not too bad. Now I get tattooed so I don't spend money on drugs." And then he started telling bits of it. So I think you take it as maybe upselling a small thing. I feel like he was downplaying it a bit, because he sounds like quite a genuinely looking after people, nice person now, but then equally, I don't know.
No, I think that what we're saying actually could fit together, which is what I probably believe. Is that I think he probably did have a hard upbringing.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have that many tattoos, probably. Particularly not in 1995, if you've not got a few like demons in your closet.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying isn't that he had a really easy life. What I'm saying is that I don't think that he ever really went to prison. I think that his persona of like, I'm Rick to life, because it's like 25 to life.
Yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't matter really.
I don't know.
But that bit I'm not so sure about.
Bless him.
Anyway, talking about idiots, we then go on to District 9. District 9 aren't a band that I know very well. Not terribly good, but one of them uses the term "word to your mother" at one point, and the lead singer, and there was more than one lot of live footage at a different gig, the lead singer always wore a backpack on stage.
Little JanSport bag. It's got nothing in it, but one time he stole some towels from a hotel, put them in his bag, and they exploded during his set.
I thought you'd made that story
that's what
up.
he said.
Oh, you were telling me a story.
No, he said it. He said
I thought you were joking.
His wife had nicked loads of towels from a hotel they were staying at, put them in his bag. He'd gone to play the gig, and then he was jumping about, and they all spilled out in the crowd, and she ran out and grabbed them.
There is absolutely no excuse for him or any reason to wear a fucking backpack on stage.
Especially when it looked empty, apart from the time he
It was
had towels in
definitely
it.
empty. It was definitely there purely as a fashion thing.
Yeah.
Because like in the 90s, again, I don't think this is that shocking to anyone, and it's sort of true now
Backpacks
as well.
were a thing.
Backpacks were super cool.
Yeah.
On two shoulders.
I had to have a JanSport bag when I went to school.
You don't know the mid-90s though,
No.
darling.
Oh, well.
It was way bigger in the mid.
Was-
No, I'm kidding. But the guy's just an idiot. They catch up with him 10 years later, and he's basically just made a nice little life for himself in Baltimore. He sort of lives in... He says that he's getting District 9 back together.
He's like, "Oh, I've got some great people," and you're like, "Oh yeah, who?" And he's like, "Yeah, I got
My
Andy,
wife's brother.
And no, he doesn't name him. He was just like, "Yeah, Big Phil and Bobcat." Like, you don't know. You think, "Oh, who's he going to name?" Oh, literally, who even knows who these people are?
Yeah,
good for him.
The guy is a fucking idiot.
Oh.
The guitarist in this band is obviously like living a really... He's like this young kid that doesn't seem to give a fuck, but like found a dead body up the road a couple of...
Accidentally did crystal meth 2 days ago, but he's fine.
Like, I don't know whatever happened to him, but he looks about... At one point he has to work out his own age, and in order to work out his own age he only has to add 6 to 18, I think, and he can't do it, and he asks for help. So
And
you
they
know,
never answer that.
no,
either.
they
It
never
just
answer
moves
that. But he looks about 12, but I think he must be 24. I mean, I'm doing the maths for him.
I think he's 24.
But I'm not really sure.
Poor Lovey.
And then we've got Vision of Disorder. Vision of Disorder went on to like way bigger things. This was really early. They were still doing... So Vision of Disorder became known in the later 90s. Almost like a sort of Kill Switch Engage type of thing. They did
really?
that thing. They were one of the first bands to do that thing where you scream the verse, sing the chorus. Big chorus.
Yeah.
Scream the verse, do a big chorus. They were one of the first bands that I ever heard to do that, and I think probably were one of the first bands to sort of in a vaguely mainstream way to do that. So they did influence a lot of really shit things that came afterwards. But
See,
still.
in this documentary, I'd not heard of them. I'd not heard of any of these people apart from Madball, really. And I found myself really disliking him at first because the guy who writes the songs and sings obviously finds himself very good and very poetic. But then... when they showed footage of him and with their lyrics, I was like, actually, they are the better of the lyrics so far, and this is the better sounding thing.
It's
but
weird.
I've never heard them before.
It's weird when they go and catch up with them later, and he's just sort of like this kind of suave dude.
He looks like the dude from Maroon 5.
Yeah, it's really odd. But then, weirdly, that's how I remember him. Like, I remember him being this sort of like quite handsome lead singer in this sort of hardcore band.
Not with his little bright bleached dreads that he had in 95.
No. Going back to him being a poet, he says at one point he thinks he is a poet, but, and this is a quote, no point in talking about the lyrics because we don't have time. Which I thought was quite good. Also, there's a guy doing kung fu in the Vision of Disorder pit who's wearing a Portishead shirt, which really bemused me. And I wonder whether he does kung fu when he hears like Portishead.
Glory box comes on.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
yeah!
Because he really likes it. Yeah. Because it makes as much sense to do a kung fu kick to Glory Box as it does to Vision of Disorder. Then we got a bit of Madball. I don't think we need to talk about Madball too much. But then we go on to Crown of Thorns. Thorns with a Z.
Oh, God.
This guy's name is Ezek.
But now it's Danny Diablo.
But now it's Danny Diablo. And the important thing, very important thing to say about this guy is that I'm pretty sure he's now a juggalo. If he's not an actual juggalo, he's definitely done loads of juggalism.
Juggalism.
He is kind of like a rap dude now. He was in Scarhead for a long time, who I think were on Hellcat Records. They were definitely like the most known thing that he's done.
Oh, okay.
And I never really listened to Scarhead, to be honest, so I can't really tell you what they're like.
They got mentioned a lot.
I think it is kind of like... I know Tim Armstrong produced them.
Yeah.
And Travis Barker...
Well, Travis Barker signed
him. Signed him. As
Danny Diablo,
artist, right?
yeah, I think so.
So, I mean, he just drops as many names as he possibly can. He's got a one-eyed dog who's really cute.
He's got a girlfriend who keeps calling a whore, so that's nice.
He says every single bad word, and apart from the racial ones, he pretty much drops every single bad word.
Oh, no, I think he does some racial ones as well, as he thinks is as a camaraderie thing, but he doesn't get to do that.
Yes, he does, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does that a lot.
Yeah.
And he's Jewish, so he throws a few Jewish things around.
Oh, actually, talking about problematic language, Rick to Life, he really balls up at one point. So when they catch up with Rick to Life in the mid-2000s, he's touring and he's moaning about all the bands who used to be hardcore bands who have now, in his words, become pretty. And he's talking about 18 Visions, who were that terrible band who did the shouting in the verses, singing in the chorus things. And then he starts talking about AFI, who obviously in 2005 had just got really big.
Yeah.
And this is another example of where people have just completely disconnect two things that he literally says this in one sentence. He's obviously prepared this joke.
Yeah.
He's decided that it's really funny to call AFI, wait for it, children, gay-FI. Right?
Oh, yeah.
So obviously he's using gay in the in a negative
derogatory term
way, right? So, and he's obviously prepared this, and he's standing on stage and he's talking about it, and he's saying, "Oh, I hate all of these bands who are pretty boys. Like, we're not pretty boys. We've been ugly since day one.
Yeah.
Like, look at 18 Visions. They're in the charts now just because they put makeup on and all of this stuff." And then he goes to say, "And gay FI," because he's obviously got it ready because he thinks it's funny. Then he stops himself. He goes, "And they also get..." And then he stops himself and he goes, "I mean, we've got absolutely nothing against anyone who's gay. Like, you guys can just do whatever you want, but gay FI." And it's like, no, mate, you can't have it both fucking ways.
Do what you want, but...
Yeah, either gay is a term to use to insult people with, or you don't have a problem with people's ways of life. That doesn't
You don't get
fucking
to
add
do
up.
both.
And that's one sentence. And again, that's that. I lost patience with Rick to Life.
True. Yep. Sorry.
Mr. to Life.
Mr. to Life.
At that point, Mr. to Life
Mr. R to Life
was dead to me. John Joseph is quickly interviewed in this 1995 documentary, and he's being tough a lot, and then he's saying about how amazing his life was, and then at one point he says, "Actually, I'm writing a script about myself for a film." And then doesn't pick
Writing
up
a
on
script
that.
about it right now.
No, nothing else
Nothing
about that. I
up
mean,
there.
presumably the film's never been made, but he says it quite confidently. Then we've got No Redeeming Social Value, who consider themselves to be what you can only describe as very wacky.
Very wacky. They do joke songs.
From what I can make out, they were certainly still going in the late 2000s. They might even still be going now.
Unfortunately, I kind of enjoyed them a bit as people.
I think
because
it's
I think that
Go
scene
on.
does need taking the piss out of. So I think that they were slightly taking the piss out of a scene that really does need the piss taken out of it.
I
But
think that would
not
be true.
enough.
That's
And-
sort of half. I think the reason that you like them is because they sound like something from your youth.
Oh, but that's the problem. No, it does.
They're more like Bloodhound Gang mixed with like Jackass.
Yeah,
basically, that's their.
They
kind
could
of
be on the
thing.
Moonscar on the
Yeah.
Moonscar Europe tour,
Yeah.
fucking about. Like, yeah, they remind me of all those stupid bands that annoyingly I would have seen when I was 13, 14.
I mean,
But yeah,
one of them does a Mooney. They
all
get
get
their
their
cocks
cocks
out at
out.
one point. There's one
Jump
bit
up and
where they
down.
say, "Oh, there's a girl that keeps getting interviewed throughout this thing who just like really likes hardcore,
Yeah.
and she's as tough as the boys." She says, "Oh, the thing is, I just really love them because they always dress up in outfits." And I'm like, well, that's not really a reason to love a band.
Yeah.
But one of them, she says they dressed up as Eazy-E, and I was just like, I hope they didn't. And
Yeah,
and
none
I
of them
don't-
are allowed
I
to
mean,
do that.
this is mid-90s, so I think Eazy-E's already dead.
Yeah.
And if not, everyone knows he's got AIDS. So, I mean, neither of those things are good. And then on top of that, if they dressed up as him in any way,
Yeah.
I don't want to explore it. But
Yeah.
anyway, I fucking hated these fucking douchebags. They just seem like such idiots.
No, they were obviously buffoons. But I like that there was proper idiots in, for some reason, going along in this scene. Because everyone else was so... I don't
Yeah.
agree with any of their humour. I don't agree that they were funny. I just like that there was someone in that scene making that music, taking the piss out of it, but also being on the same bill as all those bands, and played the Black and Blue Bowl only a couple of years ago.
But I got the impression from the interview that they did in the mid-2000s that at the point that they were in this film, that they weren't really a part of anything. They say something like, "Oh yeah, after that film," because the guy who's made the film
Yeah.
obviously wants to consider himself very important.
Yeah.
So he asks everybody, like,
What
what
do you
did the
think?
film do to
Yeah.
you? Did it do for you? And they said, "Oh, well, we got to know all of those bands and we started playing gigs with loads of New York hardcore bands, which
so
we
maybe
hadn't
they
really
weren't it.
before." So they obviously did become that, don't get
Yeah.
me wrong. But I don't know, I think they were another sort of like bunch from the suburbs.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, this is some really classy filmmaking. They go from No Redeeming Social Value, pulling Moonies, to immediately 108, who are the
Yeah.
most serious, proper hardcore Hare Krishnas, dressed up in all the outfits,
Yeah.
playing music which is literally like, this music
Face
is
melting.
life and death to us. Like,
Yeah.
we are not messing around at all. And it's such a weird change in tone for a documentary
Yeah.
to do. I fucking love 108.
I really enjoyed them. I don't know them before this.
Yeah, they're brilliant. I think they're absolutely brilliant. And again, that's the sort of music that in the later part of the 90s was totally what I liked. I suppose it was overly serious. It's got to be said. I'm going to play a band actually on the old on the old song, which kind of fit into this. It's
Okay.
it wasn't really metallic. Certainly wasn't Youth Crew.
Yeah.
Definitely wasn't Old School. It was super serious.
Yeah.
It was hardcore of some sort. It didn't sound like Earth Crisis on the one hand, which had gone like way more metal.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like
Just
screaming,
super heavy
screaming punk. I don't
something.
know. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah,
sorry, it was a transcendental jam.
Oh, it was. Of course.
Sorry,
it was.
remember
Yes,
that.
Of course. I don't know if they all were. But the interesting thing about 108 is when they get caught up with, two of them are still Hare Krishnas.
Yeah.
But they're much less serious about themselves.
Yeah.
One of the things we haven't even mentioned once, which is crazy considering who we're talking about, is how seriously everybody in this scene takes themselves.
Yeah.
Apart from No Redeeming Social
Yeah.
Value. Like, their interviews are just so serious. And I feel like that definitely went through, like, the 90s, the late 90s hardcore scene was so serious. So serious. But by the time you caught up with 108 in 2005, they're like, yeah, we're still Hare Krishnas, but like we're parents now.
Yeah.
We don't play so much. And like we weren't really trying to force people to become Hare Krishnas. We were just kind of trying to get this message out.
It was just, we were learning as we go along. We never
Yeah.
preached. We were just, we were exploring. That's what we were doing.
They totally preached. And the reason they
Yeah.
were so cool was probably because they were preaching. So
Yeah, and one of them like went off and was just like, yeah, so I abandoned the band because I needed to do the Hare Krishna thing. And then I realised, and then I was like, I became Big Cheese, became the president of the temple.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I kind of got into this just to like see God, straight up see God. And I haven't done that. And it's taking a lot of my time.
So now I've got the worst
So now-
dreadlocks in
No,
the
I don't do
entire
anything.
world. This guy's dreadlocks. If we can, we'll try and share a picture.
I thought he had a wig on.
It is the most. They're like comedy dread. It's as if someone has honestly. It's like when Hastings had a reggae festival, right? And Hastings isn't generally. This is a bit harsh, maybe, but it's not like necessarily the most multicultural.
I think it's fair to say.
Understanding place.
Yeah.
And
They
we
do
were
claim to
driving.
like reggae.
We were
Oh.
driving out of town when the Hastings Reggae Festival was coming on, and there was a guy walking back towards the festival.
Yeah.
He had a Bob Marley t-shirt on, a pair of
Rasta
shorts,
hat.
I think, with like the Jamaican flag on them. He'd just gone all out, but
He
he
bought
had
every comedy item.
but he had a wig, and he was obviously wearing it for genuine reasons. But he had like what was a comedy Rastafarian wig,
Yeah.
and it looked exactly like this man's actual hair.
Yeah, it was strange.
It's insane.
It was
This guy's
very
hair is
strange.
insane.
But,
We've
you know,
gone
he's
on
having
for
a
way
nice
too
life.
long. We need to finish. Have you got any thoughts about the 90s stuff generally?
I didn't really know a huge amount about New York hardcore to start with. So my only knowledge of it was probably the 80s stuff and then the 90s metallic stuff. Like the early,
Yeah.
Biohazard, pretty
Yeah,
much.
yeah.
Sorry, we haven't mentioned Sick of It All, which is pretty much the ones that continue it on.
Yeah.
So Sick of It All were a band that I saw having not been to a gig in years. This was like in my 20s, like between the ages of like 15 and whatever. I hadn't been to a gig in so long. And yeah, for some reason I went to see Sick of It All in about 2013, 2012. And yeah, it was the first gig I've been to, carried on going to gigs ever since then, but it was the first time I'd seen anyone in ages. And I'd kind of forgotten that hardcore existed in any realms. So yeah, as much as I don't really listen to Sick of It All much, I do respect them for getting me back into gigs.
I really like Sick of It All, and I've always really liked Sick of It All. They never necessarily stood out that much, but they're a great thand, and they definitely they're a bit like Bad Religion. They've sort of made the same album over and over again, but they do it really well, like what they do. I did like the fact that the bass player from Sick of It All, when he was interviewed, I think in that first film, said that the reason that he really loves hardcore is because it's music that's not pretentious. And it was right at the end of the film, and we just watched all these people being incredibly pretentious, but just in a sort of street, it's a weird, I suppose pretentious means different things depending on who you're talking about, but I think it's very pretentious to just talk about how tough you are for ages.
Yeah, 100%. And also, coming straight after the bit where Youth of Today have been like, yeah, so the scene didn't die, but it did kind of stop because of all the cliquiness and the pretentiousness.
Yeah.
But the one band that carries it on is Sick of It All, and they're like, we love it because it's not pretentious. Like, dude, did you just miss all of that last bit?
And talking about pretension, this is one other note that I made from the second film, is that so many of them insist on being interviewed without their tops on.
Oh, gotcha.
And there's no reason. It's not like they've just got off stage or anything. They're literally just sitting in their house.
Yeah.
But they've taken the fucking tops off. But the thing I love about the 90s is the way that they have to deal with that in the 90s, because they've got these clip-on microphones, is that they've all got fucking Krishna necklaces on. So the microphones are just stuck on their Krishna necklaces so that they can show off their... Some of them haven't even got that big muscles. Some of them are tubby.
Some of them are tubbies and they're very scrawny.
They're still insistent on...
Oh, God, we haven't even talked about, what the fuck's his name from the Cro-Mags? Is it Harley or Harvey?
Maybe we shouldn't, because I'm going to have to play with him soon.
Yeah, maybe we won't mention him, but yeah, he's very proud of himself. Well, let's not talk about him too much, but he's got a face that's something.
Pride is maybe... There we go. Let's get into a bit more, because we're going to have to finish this soon.
Yeah.
Pride is a very interesting thing in New York hardcore. It's something that they talk about an awful lot. And it's another thing that I feel like there's a bit of cosplay going on. There's a little bit of just like, this is a word that I know, so I'm just going to attach it to things. Like, people talk about being proud of like such random things. And I don't know if it's a New York thing. Like, people are like proud of their subway trains in New York. They're proud of their streets. They're proud of like the car that they drove when they were 18. pride is like this bizarre concept to them that doesn't seem to mean what pride actually means. And if you listen to the lyrics in New York Hardcore, like pride and being proud is something that comes up an awful lot in these things. Pride is this concept to them that means something so bizarre that I don't understand, and I can't work out what it is.
It is this bravado buffoonery that I don't understand.
How can you feel anything about your subway system? There's one guy that's got the he's in his house and he's got the subway system poster behind him on the wall. Like stuck in his house. That's the art. That is the art that he's got in his flat. The subway system.
He's proud.
But pride is a very strange thing.
It is strange. Well, my general takeaways was that I really enjoyed certain bands and I really enjoyed certain bands' philosophies, but I wouldn't say that they were the overarching, long-lasting memory of New York Hardcore. I.e., I really like Youth of Today and everything they did. I like Biohazard, and I quite
we haven't
like
really
all that.
talked about Biohazard.
I quite like all the metallic nonsense side of things. I really like Biohazard when they're proud.
Biohazard are so proud.
And they're so proud, and they're proud about some really nonsense things. How good they are at walking down the street.
He's really proud of how many blocks it is between him and the subway. That's another example.
Yeah.
He does that, doesn't he?
He could do it every day.
He could do it every fucking day. He can walk 12 blocks every day. Mate, I can walk
stand in the rain when he's waiting for his train.
I can walk to the seafront and have some chips every fucking day too.
But, and I know it's all tongue in cheek, but I fucking really enjoy it, and I feel like they can't possibly be as proud as they sound, but good on them. But yeah, no, all the Youth of Today stuff is just wonderful, and I love everything that they were kind of trying to do and trying to say. Everything else around it, with a pinch of salt, I can enjoy it. I can never understand the dancing. I'll never understand how you can preach being nice to everyone but humans and then punch humans in the face. It's just weird. But
I think it makes sense for some of the later bands because even the Straight Edges, there was a lot of celebration of hate in the later era.
Oh, especially
in like Victory Records late 90s era, that Earth Crisis thing, and into like Hatebreed, I suppose is like the obvious where this went. There was a lot of people talking about like, I'm angry and I hate people, and I don't think there's anything wrong. We all hate people. Like, it's one thing to talk about it, but it is weird. There is a disconnect.
Yeah,
there is definitely a disconnect between some of this stuff. But you have also got to pull this stuff apart a little bit, because like the Youth Crew stuff, which is the stuff that had the positive message, that was where it was like Posy. That's where Posy came from.
I didn't actually even know that existed until I was listening to the Youth of Today album in the car, and I was like, God, he's just singing about lovely things.
Yeah.
I mean, he's sounding fucking mental doing it, but like, isn't this lovely?
But I do think that for the most part, those Posy Youth Crew bands, say what you want about that attitude, they were quite genuine. They weren't the ones who were saying also beat people up.
No.
Like, and they weren't violent. And like I say, so many of them were involved with like Krishna and stuff. I suppose it didn't go hand in hand. But so there is sometimes you can lump everything. We probably do this with a lot of stuff. I definitely do this with a lot of stuff. You say like New York Hardcore, and you lump the whole lot in, and you say, how can it be that they're really posy, but they also all beat each other up all the time? But actually, in reality, although there is question, there is definitely some confusion about it. I think that happens now with people that think that they're doing the New York Hardcore thing. Yeah. So those things are separate. If you go back in history and you look and you say, there's this positive message from this group of people. Yeah. There's this hateful message from this group of people. There's this spiritual message from this group of people. There's all these different messages. But what happens is now, I think, for some people, is they don't look into it enough. Yeah. So a lot of the bands who are around now who are influenced by this stuff are like, we're a posy band, but fuck shit up. Yeah. And it's like, But what you've done there is you've got confused. It's like you found two bands that sound similar and come from a similar place, but have completely different messages. Yeah. But you've just figured, oh, well, my message must just be a mixture of these two things. Yeah. Even if they don't sit together. And when, going back to the very start of this, when we were talking about cosplaying things, of course, if you cosplay things, there's no emotional attachment. Yeah. It's one of the problems with, I think, the modern world. Yeah. Everybody is like cosplaying these ideas that they have a vague idea about, but they don't really know. And of course, we have a very vague idea of New York Hardcore.
I mean, we weren't there. We're not old enough, so we're also trying to pick it apart.
But it's like if you go into it with a bit of pride in yourself, right, and you go into it thinking that you're right and you'll take yourself really seriously, but you get it a bit wrong. That's what I think a lot of hardcore that came in and music influenced by hardcore as well. Because like nu metal was influenced by this shit. You know, a lot of really shit problematic music came out of hardcore, maybe not specifically New York.
Yeah.
And I think that it was a case of doing almost what we've done. I think I'm just thinking back over the conversation we've just had, and I sort of regret it a bit. Because what we've sort of done is we've taken all of these different elements of this one musical scene, and we've talked about them like they're one thing. And I think that that's what a lot of people do now. Because they have no emotional connection to the thing itself.
But I would say that in doing this, I've found out that it isn't all one thing.
Yeah,
and I think you're right. You have to look at it properly. And I think we haven't discussed it as one thing at all. I think we've discussed the things we don't like as one thing, because to be honest, it is all basically one bit of it that I don't really enjoy. But there is tons of different parts to this, and there's loads to enjoy about it. But you're right, the Disconnect is strange. The band that I'm thinking of that was telling people to get to the fucking front and I'm going to fucking let's go beat someone up. I'm pretty sure one of them had a Youth of Today t-shirt on. And I'm just like, now I know how stupid that is. But you know, they're also 21 and they're just going, I like hardcore. I've got the, you know, and they've put it all together and just decided.
But I hate to say it, I'm going to be that fucking guy from the meme again who's chasing the girl down the thing, asking her to name 3 Misfits songs.
And you shouting at clouds or whatever.
Probably.
Which we are.
But there is an element to which, like, and even if there's nothing wrong with this, in our culture now, there is an acceptance that you would wear a Metallica t-shirt and not have a clue who Metallica are.
Yeah.
Right? Now, I'm not saying that the boy in the band with the Youth of Today t-shirt, I'd never heard Youth of Today, but he doesn't put the same... If I wear a band's t-shirt, it has to be someone I really like.
Yeah, like right? I agree with this band.
I want to be like... I want to be proud of that t-shirt.
I am represented by this band right now. Yeah.
And I do sort of think that like there is an element within people maybe who are a bit younger than us whereby actually it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter.
This is the correct t-shirt to wear to this gig.
Kind of. And of course as well, there's a disconnect probably between that guy with the Youth of Today t-shirt and who might have been, let's say he's the bass player.
Yeah.
And the bass player might have been this super posse guy, and he's sitting there thinking, I wish my singer would stop telling people he was going to beat them up. You know, like there is, it's really complex.
It is.
Life is complex.
New York hardcore, you were more complicated than we realised. People should treat it that way and not just kick people in the head.
But the ironic thing is that the people involved in it don't seem to know that it's more complicated than everybody else realises. Like, they're the ones who are making it complicated.
Yeah.
But they all fucking say the same 6 to 10 sentences.
Yeah.
You interview any of these motherfuckers, they're going to say the same, one of the same...
Proud, legit, truth, true faith.
So, you know, there's no message.
No.
Let's play some music.
Let's play some music. This is a song from a band that we have played before. I think we've played them twice before.
This is the first three times. This is a slam dunk or
triple threat. No, it's not a triple threat. But they do many
things. What the fuck is up?
What the fuck is up? No, this is the band that we're playing for the first time, for the third time.
First time for the third time.
Third time play. This band is called Desborde and the song is Panico. They're a band from Argentina. They are fucking brilliant. This is from their new EP, Todo es una mierda. Pretty sure that's right.
Yeah.
Available.
It would have been better if you said it in Norfolk.
Todo es... No, I can't do it. Available now in the UK on cassette via Noise Merchant.
And quickly, if you listened to us on the Football, Beer and Punk Rock podcast.
Oh, gosh.
You will know that we picked this as our banger.
Yeah.
On there.
Banger of the week.
Because we were asked to pick a banger of the week. And if you haven't listened to that, you should go and listen to it.
Yeah, it's fucking cool. It is fucking cool.
Siobhan tells a story about how she pooed in the church.
No!
So if that doesn't sell it to you, I do not know what will.
This is what you tell people that you've never met before, who ask you to be on their podcast. I'm so sorry to you guys, but they're very, very, very nice people, and yeah, you should go and check out their podcast. But in the meantime, we're going to play Desborde with Panico.
Pictures up.
Rolling.
Rolling.
It's the trash.
It's the sweet, sweet trash.
Avoid fainting. Keep repeating.
I love what I see.
Leave the auditorium. It's only a movie.
This week's trashy movie for review is Surf Nazis Must Die from 1987.
Sometime in the near future, a major earthquake will lay waste to the entire California coastline. From out of the rubble will rise a menace far more terrifying than the death and destruction. Surf Nazis. Who rules the beaches? Who rules the surfers? The beautiful beaches, once the crown jewels of California, are now ruled by ruthless gangs. Only one person is powerful enough, daring enough, brave enough to stop them. Only one person can ensure that surf Nazis must die. She's tough.
I want to buy a gun. He's talking like trash, but I'm more interested in something that'll take the head off a honky at 20 pesos.
She's dangerous. She's all woman. She's Leroy's mama. And as long as she's alive, the surf Nazis must die.
Taste some of Mama's home cooking, Ada.
See the film that is creating a tidal wave of action all over the world. See Surf Nazis Must Die.
Set in a futuristic California hellhole in which an apocalyptic natural disaster has left the iconic Baywatch perfect beaches of Malibu and Venice's ganglands, various parties battle with one another in an attempt to control the sand and sea of this former West Coast paradise. Where do you want to start?
Well, let's start by the fact that we're reviewing this film because it stars Dukey Flyswatter, although not listed as Dukey Flyswatter on this film.
No, he's Michael Saunier in this.
He is.
Which did confuse me ever so slightly.
Dukey Flyswatter is his real name, Michael Saunier is his stage name.
Of course,
clearly.
of course.
So we thought we would review that to celebrate this documentary that we've already mentioned. So
Yes.
again, go and support that.
Go and support it. We do like
Spoiler
this film.
alert, this is
Spoiler.
probably my second favourite film of all time.
And I don't know if we'll ever get to reviewing your favourite. It is a beautiful film. It was released by Troma. It's not a Troma film itself, though. And we'll go into Troma in another future episode.
I think we're going to do a Troma episode
Yeah.
at some point.
And so that possibly gives you an indication of the style of this film. It's very trash. It's very silly. It's very deliberately like, I don't know. From the very beginning, there's people with swastikas all over their faces and all over their clothes. So it's gonna.
They are the baddies, though. I mean,
Yeah.
there is problematic aspects to this, which maybe we'll get to. But it's not made by Troma. It's made by someone else, and so I'm not sure that I would totally agree with you that it's like a classic Troma film.
No, I didn't say it was a classic Troma film. I said if you like Troma.
No, but that's what
in
fact,
okay.
it is a classic Troma film because it's like one of the big ones. But I don't think that it's actually that similar in style.
Okay.
But I think that I view this film in a slightly delusional way, in as much as I consider it to be extremely atmospheric and very beautiful.
Okay.
I don't know that anybody else would necessarily completely agree with that.
If we can just be very, very clear on Dave's idea of atmospheric and beautiful, it must be raining. And if it's not raining, if it can be in some kind of post-apocalyptic wasteland, then it's atmospheric and beautiful. And this is post an earthquake that has ruined the beach.
Yeah.
So I feel like, I mean, if it's got a lot of concrete, poor graffiti on the wall.
You're ruining all my points.
No, but this is what you consider atmospheric. The picture on the back is a man in the dusk, and you can barely make out that he's holding a surfboard. And I think you really enjoy this.
That's one of the most beautiful images I've ever seen. No question. I have a long history with this film, and I fucking love it. So let's start with you, Siobhan. What did you like about Surfing? Or what did you dislike also about Surfing Nazis Must Die?
I'm not sure what I disliked because I did really, 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 really enjoy this film. I love that there's gang warfare. It was very trying to be the Warriors at some point, and all of the gangs are hilarious. There's someone who is covered in paint splattered clothing who is very serious but has the best kind of delivery of lines and is just so funny.
Yeah, the gangs they're not quite the Warriors because they obviously didn't have enough people.
No, there are only three in each one.
Yeah, but there's like some surfer dudes.
Yeah.
There's some skater kids who seem to have their some sort of sexy mother along with them.
Yeah.
There's some kung fu guys.
Yeah.
There's like some biker people that aren't really a gang as such, but they sort of come along for the ride. And then later on, there seems to be a gang of fishermen, which I think they were they were a bit desperate for ideas there.
Of course.
But the ones you're talking about, I wasn't really sure exactly what they were. They were just like sort of surf-looking guys with paint on them.
They're called blow, curl and dry, because I think they're maybe meant to be hairdressers.
Oh, interesting.
Maybe. I don't know. It's not clear. They have nice hair, but it's not obvious. I think the concept of it is absolutely hilarious, because at first you're like, what the fuck does surf Nazis must die really mean? And the guy who made it, and I think it is quite clear, is it's about, in California, people getting really funny about who surfs on which bit of the beach. And so the director was just like, I called them surf Nazis, like, because they were trying to take over their little space. And so it is about literally a group of people that are actual Nazis trying to control the beach. And I just think that's fucking genius and actually really hilarious and really clever.
And I think it sets up for... You couldn't really say it had a political message as such, but it does set up a really good group of baddies for... The original idea for this film was that there was a Mama Washington character who is a sort of elderly black lady.
Yeah.
Whose son is killed, and so she goes on a rampage.
By the Nazis.
Yes. Well, it turns out by the Nazis, but the original idea was all about her. Because I always think, surf Nazis is such a cool idea. I just presume that would be the first idea of the film, but the original version of this film actually wasn't necessarily the Nazis weren't the bad guys. It was just like there were some bad guys.
Yeah.
But the idea that they had was that there was just this really unusual kind of action star.
Yeah.
I suppose, sort of an overweight, elderly black lady on a motorbike with a gun who was going to like reap revenge. And she doesn't play a huge role until like later on in the film.
Yeah.
So I remember the first time I ever watched this, I was quite taken aback when she became a vigilante in a way. Even though watching it now, it's obvious that they're building up to that.
It is, but I like how little they pay it attention.
Yeah.
The shots are more meaningful. Like, it's to the point. Like, she gets moved into the residential home and within minutes she's started a gambling ring and she's smoking.
Yeah.
And
she's awesome, by the way.
Then she buys a gun and that scene's very short. So it's all a bit more to the point, which I think makes it more, like, stand out.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. It is weird because she doesn't really feature for ages.
But I think that, in a way, that's what makes it such a good film. It's like two really fucking great ideas.
Yeah.
Like this unusual vigilante story that you've never seen before and probably never have seen again.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen, apart from Rabid Grannies, it's like Troma does this a lot. I've never really seen like an elderly person as the person to bring the violence.
Yeah.
But also then you come up with this idea of these fucking surf Nazis that are running gangs and this sort of warrior style, and the fact that it's set on the beach and everything, like it's just brilliant. And the beach is falling apart, like it's such a cool setting.
It is so wonderful. I think as with loads of these films, the actors and actresses are probably not doing a lot of acting prior to this.
I think
it's fair to say. Some of them did, but like
Mama Washington was in Naked Gun 1 and 2.
Whoop, whoop. But I feel like there's a certain delivery style to people who have that turn up in these films that I really enjoy. Sometimes it's really stilted, but it's kind of that typical just overact. You can't act, just overact.
Everything is really serious.
Yeah.
You can't handle the power!
Very that. No one wants to slam dance!
Yeah.
That was, so brilliant. But then it does mean that the ones who can act are really standout. So the one in that gang who I mentioned earlier, Blow, Curl or Dry or whatever his name was with the nice hair, he's really good. So he kind of stands out as really like intense and severe just because he actually can deliver a line. Adolf doesn't do his lines too well, but he's got a wonderful style about him.
Yeah.
And then Dukey Flyswatter can act, and so his delivery of lines is fucking beautiful. I'm not just saying that because there's a documentary about him soon, but like legit, like he stands out as actually really good in it.
Yeah, he shines, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I feel like quite a lot of people in this shine pretty well, actually, but he out of the Nazis, he really shines.
Yeah.
You never forget him.
And
he's quite an unusual presence, like generally, just in all of his films. And so I think I'd say this about him just as a person. But he's a very unusual presence, and as a result, like even before I knew who he was, he always really stood out whenever I caught him in a film, and definitely this part.
Yeah,
he was the person that I remembered.
He's also called Mengele. We should probably dwell on the fact that one's called Adolf,
Yeah.
one's called Mengele, one's called Eva. I think there's one called Brutus.
They're
all.
but one of them's called Smeg, so they don't stick with it entirely.
Also, Adolf's real name is Ricky Johnson because Smeg's mother reveals the name when she learns.
No, that is so brilliant. Where he says, no, he's like being really serious about how he's got to go and join his gang on the beach, and she goes, Adolf, is that what that snotty Ricky Johnson calls himself now? Such a brilliant line.
It is so beautiful. The script doesn't have many bangers of lines. It's just all really nice. Like, I don't know, like, nothing's like standout hilarious. There was a woman that is talking to someone else, and she describes herself. She goes, I'm his personal bitch. And I was like, oh, I don't like this. And she goes, and you do well to get yourself a more competent cunt.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the fuck? Just referencing their girlfriends or something. And it was just awful. And I was like, don't agree with the sentiment, but competent cunt is probably going to be my new name when I'm at work.
Competent cunt.
I'm going to put it. It
could
doesn't
be
say
a good
deputy
name.
ward manager anymore. It's going to say competent cunt. Yeah, probably. Competent cunt. But yeah, how about yourself? I know you enjoy this film a lot.
I mean, I don't know where to start, really, to be honest. I just think it's fucking brilliant. But the things that really stand out to me, and I must have watched this film, I reckon, double figures at this point in my life. The soundtrack.
Oh, that music is beautiful.
I think one of my favourite film soundtracks of all time, genuinely.
Oh, it's all original, just someone doing synth music.
I don't even know how they make it, because it is synth. It's definitely synth music, but there's some, like, and it might be synthesized guitar. There's some really unusual sounding, sort of surfy, but in a completely like futuristic surf guitar sound on some of these things that is so effective. And the whole thing is so incredibly atmospheric. And I think that is one of the reasons, between that and like the setting, it's one of the reasons why this film that is obviously kind of like trash, and the story is obviously like really exploitative, it's one of the reasons why it stands out in comparison to almost everything like it. Yeah. I think because it does provide this like incredible atmosphere. Yeah. At all times, and it's all that synth. I mean, there is you can get the soundtrack on record, and I never have because they keep releasing it on vinyl and it's like super expensive and stuff. Yeah. But I know that on YouTube there is a video of the whole thing, so I'll put that on the YouTube playlist as well. And I would really, even if you're not interested in trash movies at all, I think the soundtrack is just fucking perfect. It's a beautiful bit of synth. It really is. And then, all of the settings is the other thing that I just love so much. I mean, one thing for me, like, when I watch movies, I think that the feel of the movie is way more important to me than, like, the plot. Yeah. Or the, like, acting or whatever. And so sometimes, and we've talked about films like this before, like, sometimes when they just get something right, it doesn't really matter if the plot is just like standard, and this one isn't, but if it was, if it's just sort of like there's a goodie and a baddie and then in the end the goodie wins, that's fine. But if everything around that is really nice, that's what I tend to really like. And I think that in this film, like, the settings are just so beautiful. It's like somewhere that I just want to be all the time, and they're all on the beach, very Californian beaches, but they're like definitely like early to mid 80s Californian beaches where they're all really run down. Yeah. Fucking graffiti everywhere. There's loads of like really strange structures that they managed to find, and most of them, they appear to be on the beach itself, but I would guess that some of them aren't, and they probably went to other areas and stuff. It's almost like every single shot, apart from the old people's home, which is sort of boring, every shot in this fucking film, they go to a bar and it's super cool and super weird. All the stuff on the beaches, there's just like I say, there's graffiti everywhere. But it's not just graffiti. There's like weird weathered art that was obviously wasn't graffiti. It was actually proper art and stuff that's all sort of fallen apart. There's these structures that are like, one of them's like a Chinese temple. Yeah. But it's just made of stone.
It's like a bandstand sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's really weird. And there's this great big like semicircular roof thing that one of them's always sitting on, and you can never really see.
Like a big concrete jut out.
Yeah, you can't really see what it actually is because the shot is always too close up.
It might have been like a sea barrier thing, but it's massive.
But it's just it's just all of those things are like, so everything's like really sun-kissed, it's really weathered. There's this massive like air hanger thing that's like been totally burnt out, and it's got loads of holes in the ceiling. And so the sun is coming through all of those holes, and it's almost like film noir or something. Yeah. And the shots are just So beautiful. And that's where Dukey Flyswatter is, and he's
Creates
like...
all his weapons.
Yeah, he's like making weapons in there, and he makes all of these weird fucking weapons in there. But they do loads of these... Like, when people go in there, there's definitely one scene where they do this long shot, and you can hear them talking, but it's like just two shadows of figures talking to each other. But the shot itself is just so, like I say, it's like fucking film noir. It's so beautiful, and there's loads of like they put the dry ice on and all that shit, so it just gives it a bit of a nice look. But oh god, it's so cool, and there's loads of like crazy industrial stuff.
Yeah, there's loads of like pumping. I don't know what
like
you call
oil
them.
pumps,
yeah.
I guess, and some of them are on the beach, and then some of them I think they make look like they're on the beach, but actually probably aren't. I mean, I really like old weathered industrial stuff as well.
Yeah,
so,
I know.
It's kind of like it ticks all the
everything.
boxes for me. And the last scene where Mama Washington is like chasing Adolf to kill him.
Yeah.
They go through this weird like scrapyard that definitely was just real, because of course all of this stuff is supposed to be apocalyptic, or at least slightly apocalyptic. Like
it's post an earthquake, so that's ruined everything.
But it's like, I mean, it's not like it's 100 years in the future.
Oh, it's
only
in
a few.
in the very near future or something. It says.
Oh my god!
Somewhere in the near future.
That first shot, which is literally just it just says sometime in the near future. ... In this like crazy,
beautiful
80s like
I think it's in the Surf Nazis writing almost.
I mean that. Starting a film with that, I'm like, I want to find out what's happened in the near future here. But anyway, at the very end, they're running through these like massive vats that look like you could almost like people could stand in them. Like they're these ginormous things. I don't know what they are. And the scrapyard looks really beaten and stuff. And like I say, it sort of looks apocalyptic, but you know that actually they just went to these places and they looked apocalyptic.
Yeah.
And I just so wish that California still look like that, and I just want to go to all of these places. But I know that they're all going to have been like painted and gentrified and stuff.
God damn it!
This is a difficult thing to say, but the van that they drive around in is so fucking cool. But the reason it's a difficult thing to say is because it's got loads of swastikas on it.
Apart from the
swastikas, it's got like, it's just been like
really
it just looks like a punk band's van, I suppose.
And it's got a shark's face painted on the front with a big open mouth and teeth, and it's got a shark fin on the roof.
Yeah.
But other than that, the rest of it is just like graffiti over graffiti over graffiti, just like a mess.
Oh, it's so cool.
It's gorgeous.
So yeah, I mean, I just fucking love it. Dukey Flyswatter is brilliant in this, like we've already said.
Oh, I was going to say he's very handsome in it as well, which bless his heart. Like if you saw him now, bless his cottons, he actually looked like a little bit of a heartthrob of a man.
He was a handsome man, but in a way that makes what he did with Haunted Garage. So we're going off on one now again.
Yeah.
But like, he did this thing where he used to pull the bottom beneath of his eyes out all the time. So he had this thing, and he obviously had like his skin was a bit pulley. I don't know how to describe it.
Bit loose.
But if you look at him, even when he was in his... So slightly later on from this, not that much long, like in the 90s. So when he's probably in his 30s, I don't even know. He'd like, underneath his eyes were like, it's almost like scar tissue.
Oh, wow.
Because he used to just do this thing where he'd pull it so much. And like, it was all a part of his act. And it was definitely a part of like what Haunted Garage was about. There's loads of stuff where they say like, this is actually our lifestyle. I know we just look like weirdos who are just dressing up.
I mean, he's got vampire teeth now, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's just a weird dude.
I like him.
Fucking love weird dudes.
I love him.
And like I say, so his energy in this is very strange.
Yeah.
He's got a couple of really nice bits. He makes this thing called a switchboard.
Yeah.
And it's like basically a surfboard, but it's got a
switchblade on the front.
A switchblade on the front, which like pops out. And it's a really cool scene where he kind of like shows it to Adolf and he's like impressed by it. But when he actually has to use this thing in a fight, it's really cumbersome.
I've written exactly that.
He's got this massive...
Uses his switchboard as a weapon. Arrow, cumbersome.
Yeah, well, there you go. I mean, literally, he's just holding this massive surfboard. Yeah, and he's trying to sort of stab this other gang member with it, but he can't really move it properly. And you know, the fight choreography is obviously from a low budget film anyway, so they're just fucking about, really. But I really like that, and that's the point where he says, "What? No one wants to slam dance?"
Yeah,
and that's really fucking cool. There's a few bits where they go and they sort of, you see the Nazis like round the campfire, like, you know, eating weird food and doing all this weird shit. And there's one point where, for some reason, I think it's Ava says, "What was your worst ever moment?" And they all answer turn by turn. And it goes to Dukey, and he just looks at them and he just goes, "Oh, they're all bad, man." I just thought, I don't know why, that really touched me. It was a really nice thing. Aww. I think that the story is actually really a one of a kind.
Yeah.
I don't think it definitely it wouldn't be made today. It isn't problematic of itself, but you definitely wouldn't call your film "Serve Nazis Must Die" in 2022. So in a way, that is a really cool title for a movie.
I think it's a fucking excellent title.
Just the fact that it might have the word Nazi in it doesn't mean it's not really super cool, because it's not. They're not celebrating.
They're not celebrating at all.
They're the bad guys, and it literally says they must die. I do think the Nazis characters in this, despite being Nazis, are really cool. As in their fashion, apart from the swastikas, their fashions are all really super cool. Their van is cool. Where they live is really cool.
Yeah, they do that 80s punk thing. That's just fucking. They just look amazing.
It's almost what the Lost Boys ripped off.
Yeah.
Later on, and I love the Lost Boys, but I mean the Lost Boys is obviously like a corporatized version of something like this, and the Warriors. I'm sure they didn't even watch Surf Nazis Must Die before they made Lost Boys, but I just fucking love it.
Rate it.
9.95 out of 10.
I know the 10 out of 10. We'll get there one day. Yeah, I'm going a 9.
It's absolutely brilliant.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing.
So everybody watched...
Can I just say, though, we rate it a 9 and a 9.95. IMDb, 3.7. Get your fucking act together, world. You've got it wrong.
I think there might be a worse one than that. When you bring it up on Google, one of them I think is 1 out of 10. That is disgusting. And this is one of the reasons why I bring up its title. I do wonder whether there's loads of people that have given it 0 out of whatever the lowest thing is on IMDb. They were like, what? They've used Nazi in the title and then given it a 1 out of 10. I mean, it has been named the worst film of all time by film critics and stuff like that. It blows my mind. I do not understand.
I mean, have they not seen Penis Shark or whatever the fuck we've been watching? Dick Shark.
I mean, in comparison to that, it's unquestionably better.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. I can appreciate that, but I can't see how this can be worse. Have a worse score.
Yeah.
Than the vast majority of films.
Almost every other film.
That's disgusting.
Watch Surf Nazis Must Die. And
also listen to End of a Century Party, which is my old band for this episode. I said it was kind of it's not really like 108.
Okay,
this is the band I was referring to before,
this.
but it's very screamy and it's very I don't know. You tell me what... shamcityroasted@gmail.com. You tell me what genre this is. This band were around in the late 90s and they were great. They were part of this sort of emo violence. I suppose that's what you'd call it. But that's a very specific scene that only covers about 5 different bands.
I don't really even know what it is yet.
No, it isn't anything. It's just something that they used. This song is from an album of the same name.
Okay.
And the song is called "Isn't It Perfectly Fucking Delightful to Be So Goddamn Certain."
Brings us to the end of this episode of Breakfast Punks. Thank you so very, very, very much for listening to us all this time. As always, please do follow us on Instagram at Breakfast Punks Podcast, the YouTube channel, subscribe to it, Breakfast Punks Podcast, and there's going to be tons of things on there. As every episode, Dave puts together a very nice playlist of things. You must go look at it, even just for the public access TV clip of these beautiful boys and Haunted the Garage. It's fucking brilliant.
Yeah, we like potato chips. You can't just have one.
Yeah. I can't. None of us can describe how he does it, and I promise you, I don't know. I think it's worth it. He's the best thing I've ever seen. As always, email us at shamcityroasters@gmail.com if you've got any feedback, anything you'd like to say, anything you'd like us to cover. If you've got a band that you'd like us to play, we've got lots and lots of people asking us these things, so we are slowly but surely getting through all of the requests we have. And also, we have a Patreon that you can sign up to and get an extra episode each month. So thank you very, very, very much for everyone who's already doing that, and we appreciate it very much.
And if you're listening to this podcast on your way to Manchester Punk Festival, because I think it comes out the day that probably everyone's travelling.
Yeah.
So I'm just presuming that everybody is doing that. Make sure you come and see us.
Whoop whoop.
2:30
at the Sandbar.
Sandbar on the Friday.
Yep.
We're going to be doing a live Breakfast Punks episode. We've got lovely things planned.
Yeah.
Which we need to plan a bit more. But it's going to be really brilliant. It will be lovely to see loads of you there.
Yes. And if you listen to this afterwards, I hope we weren't a disaster, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Well, we might. Depending on how it goes, the next episode of this podcast, we might share it with you.
If we've managed to record it,
we're
we'll
not 100% sure. Yeah, we're not making any guarantees.
Yeah, we will see.
We're going to finish with a song. This is someone else who we played not too long ago. This is Sniff. And this is from his new EP, which is just called Another EP. We've just put it out through Toxic What's It. There was some glittery ones. We put it out on tape, and there were some glittery tapes. And I think they're sold out now. But we do still have some tapes left. So go and pick up a copy of this, because it's fucking brilliant. This song is called Confusion. We will see you in 2 weeks, unless you're going to Manchester Punk Fest, in which case we'll see you in a bit.
Whoop whoop!
Confusion, life intrusion, trying to avoid any more seclusion. I thought our romance would be getting more easy. No, monogamy has gotten me queasy. Mixed messages, I'm hedging all my bets on you. I'm trying to tell the truth, but I don't know what to do. Our connection set us back, and now we have to make do with the fact that I act on our path to push through. And while our heart's still breaking, I can really do with you not flaking. And I get that you got your own shit, but I've got no idea how to deal with it. Just please make it clear. And I know it's not your job, but I'm shaking with fear. I'll be a heartthrob, just make up your mind, and I'll be fine. But I'm falling in love, and I'm losing my mind. I'm shaking, breathtaking, confusion. It's funny, but I'm coming out of this bloody confusion. Help me to help you to help myself. Confusion. I need a shortcut, just tell me what to do. Abrasion, romantic inflation, keeping it sexy throughout the duration. I thought a romance would be getting more easy. Polyamory has gotten me wheezy. Mixed messages without piquing interest. I'm feeling lonely and I'm in a horny wild west. Please come back to me and lay your head on my chest. Maybe a break would be best. Oh. And while our heart's still breaking, I can really do with you not flaking. And I get that you got your own shit, but I've got no idea how to deal with it. Just please make it clear. And I know it's not your job, but I'm shaking with fear. I'll be a heartthrob, just make up your mind, and I'll be fine. But I'm falling in love, and I'm losing my mind. I'm shaking, breathtaking, confusion. It's funny, but I'm coming out of this bloody confusion. Help me to help you to help myself. Confusion. I need a shortcut, just tell me what to do.
Confusion, it's my new infusion. I drink it with my tea. I just don't know what's right for me. So you're welcome. You can have those lyrics. I am really sorry, but I can't. I don't think I can do the film tonight. But I will see you tomorrow evening for some more radical honesty. Radical honesty part 2.
All I wanted was a horror song for friends. Breathtaking, confusion. It's funny, but I'm coming out of this bloody confusion. Help me to help you to help myself. Confusion. I need a shortcut. All I wanted was a horror song for friends.
Welcome to the show that's you love to hate, and we hate to be loved. This is the True Nasty Boys of Public Access, or any access for that matter. This is Dino and Rocco's Back Alley.
That's right, we're like potato chips. You can't just eat one. And that goes for all you belly achers and chronic complainers who called us and the studio complaining that you were offended.
Yeah, if you don't like what you hear or what you see, you can turn it off. Go on. Come on, turn it off. Go ahead.
Can you?